All right, everyone. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Solvang City Council, December 9th, 2019, 6:30 p.m. Could I get a roll call?
Councilmember Diarnes.
Here.
Councilmember Wade.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson is not present for this meeting. Mayor Pro Tem Clark.
Here.
Mayor Tucson.
Here.
For the record, Mayor, we have a quorum. Thank you.
I believe we need a motion excusing Daniel's absence
It is
tonight.
appropriate to do so, Mr. Mayor. You can entertain a motion to formally excuse him from the meeting.
I so move.
I second.
It's been seconded.
Councilmember Diarnes.
No.
Councilmember Wade. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark.
Yes.
Mayor Tucson.
Yes.
The motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Okay. Karen, do you mind leading us in the pledge?
Yes. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first thing we have is public communications, written or verbal. I'll start off with the proclamations. During the Christmas tree lighting Yule Fest ceremony, we were able to deliver the proclamation presented to John Martino and Ben Dolson and major donors, as well as the one presented to Cuco Santana, Keith Cody, and Alfredo Trejo, staff members of the city of Solvang. But Aaron Peterson, Max Hamburg, David Rasmussen, and Carol Paskey were not available at the time, so I'm going to ask Robert to read and deliver those proclamations tonight.
Thank you. I'm not going to stand tonight. I'm going to sit. Do I have all four of you here? I see Aaron, I see Max, I see... David's out of town. Okay, thank you. I have three of the four here. Thank you very much. Whereas, inspired by the plans for the 2019 Yule Fest, Aaron Peterson sprang to action with his amazing speed, arranged the purchase and delivery of 100 Christmas trees to adorn the downtown businesses for the Yule Fest season in Solvang. And whereas Aaron Peterson, Max Hamburg, David Rasmussen, and Carol Paskey steadfastly braved the cold, rain, and the wind of a dark Solvang night to deliver the hundreds of Christmas trees and lights across the city in time for the wonderful display we all enjoy as we walk, and most important, shoppers, the downtown tonight and throughout the season. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Pro Tem Robert Clark, Mayor Ryan Toussaint, along with the City Council of City of Solvang, do hereby join in celebrating and congratulating Aaron Peterson, Max Hamburg, David Rasmussen, and Carol Paskey for bringing Christmas spirit and joy to the City of Solvang downtown during this 2019 Yule Fest season. Thank you very much. If I can hand these to you.
And as a side note, we'll just note there are many other volunteers that help make that possible, but yes.
Real quick, just to recognize the Egan brothers who got us the trees at cost. That was really important for us. We were going to go to Oregon. A few volunteers on that city council were talking about going to Oregon. And a lot of other folks, Bruce Peterson and Mike Haney and Kim Jensen, Ed Skid, and the Chamber, Tracy and David, they helped out a ton. Even Laura Hamburg was there with her muscles and pushing. Ryan sold some trees, and Chris sold some trees and got us together. Even Rich Saferight helped out and sold some trees. So there was a lot of people, and we got to stage it at Ken Hunter's lot on Alisal Road, so thank you to him also, the hardware store provided the lights. So there was a ton of us out there doing it. It was a lot of fun.
And it was a pleasure working with you. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right, we have an update on the Fig Fondo.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Kirk Nordgren. I'm the General Manager of CTS in Santa Ynez, and I'm here tonight to recap the Fig Fondo. It was 1 month ago. Just want to, again, thank you for your title sponsorship of the event, and then give you some, what I hope is encouraging information, some statistics that we gathered, some data from the event itself. From our perspective, it went really well. A couple pictures here of the rollout, kind of the staging and the start in Solvang, right by Solvang Park, and then the rollout down 246 and Happy Canyon. We got a lot of positive feedback about it. So again, as we had discussed before, Solvang, the city of Solvang's presenting sponsorship is an investment in tourism and really cycling tourism specifically. I definitely believe that that's a very desirable demographic of tourists to attract, and I hope that will be demonstrated in a few of the numbers that I show later. This year we had 700 participants. There was also family and friends along with them. I don't have a count of that. We didn't quite reach our goal. We'd like to consider it sold out at 800 to 850, but this was our biggest year yet, so that was encouraging for us. And then kind of on the urging of the city, we did try to spread the event with Friday, Saturday, and Sunday events to keep people around all weekend. So I'm going to try to answer some questions that I think you would like to know as the presenting sponsor. So where did these people come from, these 700 participants? Where did they stay? How much money did they spend? And then will they come back to Solvang again in the future? So the first map on the left, you can see that we do have an international audience that attended. Number of countries, although the vast majority are on the West Coast. Then if you look at the United States, we certainly draw from across the country, 3 and 4 people from this state or that state, but primarily Southern California, and then also the Bay Area is another good draw for us. And so zooming in a little bit more, you can see across the Bay Area we're getting a good amount of people. But then specifically Southern California, quite a few from Santa Barbara who just, this is a day destination for them. One thing that's interesting is San Diego, there was another event, another cycling event that popped up on that same weekend, only about 3 or 4 months. They didn't have a very long planning time. And that definitely hurt us. Normally the last couple of years we've seen a bigger draw from south of the LA area. So that's something that, we're kind of competing for these same people with other events across the state. So choosing a date that doesn't conflict. And I've already talked to them about not being on the same weekend next year. So it's primarily a Southern California crowd, which is probably similar to the average tourist that comes through Solvang. So where did they stay? The rest of these questions are from data that we surveyed our attendees after the event. We got about 250 responses, so that's a little over 35% response rate from our surveys. 60% reported that they stayed at least one night in the Santa Ynez Valley, and 46% stayed 2 nights. If you kind of extrapolate that across the data, that's 738 total room nights for that weekend. That doesn't include the 60 that we bought in Solvang for our staff and various participants. And then we also put up a large group, a VIP camp all week in Santa Ynez. So if you add all those together, that's about 920 total. We had talked beforehand about reaching 1,000. I don't think we quite got there. You can also see from the data that there's about 40% of the people who either don't make an overnight destination of it, or we had just under 20% who live here. So that's where you get the 60% that are staying at least a couple nights. So we did ask them what town they stayed in, and then we also asked them to specifically type in their hotel. For Solvang, the good news is that of the people who stayed here, more stayed in Solvang than anywhere else. We encouraged that. Hotel Cork was our host hotel, and they gave us as many rooms, or we filled as many rooms as they would give us for that weekend. And then just this is the word cloud of responses, but it doesn't list all of them, and I did not go through and check this, but almost every hotel, it seems like every hotel is listed at least once. There's people listing Hotel Cork, and well, I won't even read through all of them. So are there people of this 900 plus night stays? There's definitely people who are staying in Airbnbs and vacation rentals, and that's maybe there's a way that in the future we can attract more of those people to hotel stays, which I know benefits the city more. So we also asked them how much they spent while they were here, and this question specifically asked how much did you spend in addition to lodging. So this is on meals, wine tasting, shopping, gifts, whatever that would be, in the local area. So 56% spent over $100, 31% spent over $300, 15% over $500, 6% over $1,000. If you extrapolate this across all the participants, that is $127,000 in spending in addition to lodging from these people coming into the area. So I don't know what the average tourist spends in Solvang, but this averages out to $180 per person, which, in addition to lodging, which I think goes along with the data that's out there that cycling the cycling tourist is a desirable demographic to attract to the area. Just a couple of the, I don't know where these people spend all that money. I do know where I spent a bunch of money to put on the event. I tried, on your urging, to spend within the town of Solvang, the city of Solvang, and we did do that. We also had spending around the valley at other businesses, and these numbers, this $30K in Solvang and this $15K in the valley, that doesn't include, over $10,000 to CHP and a bunch of money that we pay to the Forest Service and all the other permits, Caltrans and Santa Barbara County. In some sense, that money also stays in the community. So I found this data really interesting, and I think it will be encouraging for the city. We asked people, based on your experience at the Fig Fondo, how likely are you to return to Solvang in the future? And the good news is that the vast majority, 85%, said they were likely or very likely to return. 73% said they were very likely to return. It's actually a little bit better than how many people are going to come to do the event next year. We didn't score quite as high. It's still good. 61% said very likely to come back. 76% said likely or very likely, but that's not quite as many as the number who said they want to just come back to Solvang again on the future outside of the event. We had a ton of great written feedback about Solvang, about this third year being in Solvang specifically. Some people who had done it all 3 years and thought this was the best location. Some people who said they had been to Solvang before but had never really connected with the city until they had been here to participate in the event. Talking about seeing the local Solvang restaurants and cafes featured, small town atmosphere, great park, all of those things that we would hope to see. A couple quick notes here. Beyond just the return that the city gets from TOT and sales tax and word of mouth, people having a great time in Solvang that weekend, I also believe that the benefit of your presenting sponsorship extends beyond that. And these are just some of the marketing, the media reach numbers, the social media impressions, the email opens. I shared some of these numbers a couple weeks before the Grand Fondo when I was here, and they went up 30 to 45%. Since then, that last month, we get a lot of interest and feedback. And then, of course, we had a couple celebrity attendees. So we have that statistic of our 150,000 social media impressions that we work to get across the course of the year. Reggie Miller participated in the event. He has 380,000 Instagram followers. That's a few more than us. So he put out a ton of really positive participation. This was his first Grand Fondo, his first cycling event. He did get lost, but he had a great time. And so he had a ton of really positive things to say. And so all of those people that we bring here who are influencers, they spread that to their audiences. To date, we've donated $8,000 to charity for this year's event. Again, trying to keep that money with some really good local organizations. And then a couple quick notes on year number 4. We do hope to come back. We would love to come back in Solvang, and we think that Solvang Park really maximizes that participant experience. We would like to stick with the second Saturday in November, which is what we've always been, which is that November 13 to 15 weekend in 2020. And then we would love to see Solvang come back as the presenting sponsor again. We think it's a really good investment. It keeps the event viable, and it continues to position the city as a cycling tourism destination. So with that, I do want to present to you, Mayor and City Council, a jersey with Solvang and the Danish flag on it. This is our Fig Fondo jersey from this year. So we framed that up for you, and you can hang it wherever you like. Maybe right there, there's a nail where that clock used to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of the presentation?
Only I would have liked to have known is how many, in going forward, it's kind of, I know it's their fourth year now, if you do it again, but to find out where people, if there was, how many people it was their first visit to Solvang, if you could ask that in your questionnaire.
Sure, like they've never been here before.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
ask your respondents
Yeah.
of how many people have not been Solvang prior to the race. That's all I would say.
But thank you for all the data and
Yeah, that was good.
all that. It's really
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have a comment in the sense that I met some of these people from Houston, Texas, for example, and Sacramento and some faraway places, and they were amazingly committed to this location and to this ride. So kudos to you for putting on an amazing event. I think the community benefited. I can't wait to see what the TOT looks like and the sales taxes from it, but I appreciate the data that you provided us. And again, just anecdotally, when we were sitting and eating lunch, we met a lot of people from the Bay Area who were so enamored with the community that they decided to stay a couple of extra nights through Monday and then leave. So it does work. It does play.
Great. With that, we'll move on to the Yulefest update.
Hello, Mayor, City Council. As you know, I am Jacob Dornan, co-owner of IDK Events. Scott apologizes that he's not here. He is a little bit under the weather today. But just a quick update on Yulefest. We'll start with ticket sales. We're currently at $28,347.68 over all of our events. The Skull Wine and Stein Stroll has 389 tickets sold. The Drone Show has 555 tickets sold, and Yule Feast has 50 tickets sold. Our candlelight tours are sold out for every weekend except for the 28th, which we still have about 10 tickets available for that. For marketing, our website, which has only been live since October 1st, has had 28.8 thousand unique visitors, which 30 of those are from Denmark, which I think is pretty cool. We've had 78,000 page views on that website. And then for media, last meeting we provided some media numbers, but those were only from 4 outlets. This meeting we've gone to all of our media outlets, and we've had online readership reach of 65.5 million, which is up 12.2 million from our last meeting. 214,000 estimated coverage views, so people actually reading about Solvang, which is up 139.8 thousand from last meeting, and then 11.7 thousand social shares, which is up from 2.8 thousand last meeting. We're still waiting on press hit.
I want to clarify. Are you telling me 68 million people saw these articles?
65.5 million people have had the opportunity to view the articles, but 214,000 people have actually read.
214,000?
Yes, correct. We are still waiting on press hits from the Santa Barbara Independent, the Santa Maria Sun, the LA Times, which is going to do another article about Yulefest, BringFido.com, which is a dog travel website, KEYT, KKFX, KCOY, they are doing a morning show segment with Mayor Toussaint. CBS News with Gail King is doing a segment on the drone show, which won't come out until the day of the drone show. Fox Business News is interested in an interview with the mayor and about Solvang in general, just not about Yulefest. And then we are getting repeated coverage from Santa Ynez Valley Star and SYV News and other local agencies. And then on social media, our Facebook, which has also been live since October 1st, has 530 followers. Our Instagram has 476 followers with over 1,200 unique page views in the past 7 days. We posted a teaser of the drone show on Facebook, which has amassed over 50,000 views and has over 100 shares. So I encourage people to get tickets to the drone show sooner rather than later. With the press hits that are coming and the press hits that we've already had, we are expecting the drone show sales to spike, and we are expecting to sell out, hopefully. An update on the events that have already happened. The Nice Adventure runs the entirety of YuleFest, so it started on November 30th. We've had 282 people start the Nice Adventure, and we've had 45 people complete the Nice Adventure. And the reward for completing the Nice Adventure up until the 21st is you get a free drone show ticket with that. And then we're working on the rewards for after the drone show. Santa's Village has started every Saturday leading up to Christmas from 12 to 4 p.m. Unfortunately, due to the rain the past 2 weekends, we had to cancel the snow. But there is no rain on the forecast for this upcoming weekend, so there will be snow. And there will also be the petting zoo again. And then on the 21st is when we will be having the live reindeer for people to meet as well. The Copenhagen Light Show officially started this last weekend. We kind of had a soft opening on the 30th. Just to see how it went. After this first weekend and discussing with the city manager, we've decided we'll be doing soft street closures while the show is actually happening. So it's about 6 minutes every half hour, just because this past weekend there were a lot of people, and there were a lot of people standing in the street, and it got a little unsafe. So we just want to make sure that everyone is driving carefully and is safe, so we'll just do soft street closures. It'll only be closed between 5.5 to 6 minutes, and then it'll open up to traffic again. And then we are also working on updating the music selection for next week to include more classic Christmas carols, Christmas classic songs and carols. And then if anyone is having any issues or comments about the light show or would like to be included in the Christmas market guide, please reach out to us. You can email us at hi@solvangyulefest.org or call us at our office number. Currently, the only people who are listed on the Christmas market guide are people who responded to an email survey that we sent out to an old SCVB list that we had access to. So I know that probably didn't encompass everyone in the city, but if anyone would like to, they can do that. I think the tree lighting went great. We estimated there were about 300 people there on Friday. The tree looks beautiful with lights donated by John Martino, and then the ornaments were donated by ESCO, which are very Solvang-centric, which I think is great. The YuleFest parade, which was on Saturday, we are predicting 1,500 plus people actually watching the parade. We had over 45 contingents in the parade and over 600 marchers. We also presented awards for the parade. So the best theme-oriented contingent, we didn't have a really specific theme, it was just kind of Christmassy and Solvang-centric, is Vikings of Solvang. The best float was Solvang Spice Market. Best equestrian entry is the Olisol Guest Ranch and Resort. Best vehicle entry was the Antisocial Stings. The best musical entry was the San Ynez Valley Union High School Pirates Marching Band. The best performance group was Cruise Dance and Entertainment, and then the best overall entry was the San Ynez Valley Cottage Hospital. And personalized.
Wait, what about the city council and the mugs?
The city council looked great.
Okay, thank
Fantastic. Personalized trophies for each of those groups will be delivered within the next week or two. And then a little update on events to come in this upcoming week. Yule Feast was originally going to be on Copenhagen Drive, but after kind of discussing with locals and merchants, we've decided to move it to the park to avoid any unnecessary street closures, because we did get some feedback that they think Copenhagen gets close to a little bit too much. So we've just moved it to the park. It's a little bit easier to activate on the park than in the street anyway. And it's a little more of an intimate vibe with the Christmas light show and how many people are out there. It would kind of be a little chaotic, so just a little easier to move to the park. And then this Friday is the St. Lucia Day Parade. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up on our website. It is free to participate. And then on Saturday and Sunday is our Wine and Stein Stroll. We have over 12 participating wine merchants that will be pouring. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have over 380 people participating in that over the weekend. And that is pretty much it for Yule Fest for now.
Can you speak to, I think I heard that Netflix is coming to town to do some kind of filming?
Yes, that was last weekend. That happened during the tree lighting and the parade. They were very low-key about it. I didn't even notice them there. We met with the producer the day of the tree lighting earlier in the day. It was a very small team, and they're doing a special on Christmas in Solvang in general.
That was Netflix?
Yes, correct.
And what about the 21st? Or is anybody coming out for that?
21st,
CBS.
unsure at the moment, unless someone else knows more than I do. But
What about the Hallmark people?
Hallmark,
I think some of those are best for when we have the PIO report. So, thank you, Jacob.
perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Jacob.
Okay. Let's see, that finishes the items that we had on the agenda. With that, we'll move on to public communications, written or verbal. Daryl, can you please announce the criteria for public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, please direct comments to the City Council as a whole regarding consent calendar items or matters not on the agenda, but within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. I would ask that everyone wishing to speak on any agenda items, if you have not filled out a card, please do so before you step up to the podium. Hand it to the clerk, and I will hand it to the mayor. And with that, Mayor, you can entertain the cards that you have received, and thank you.
Okay, our first speaker slip is Mark Infanti, followed by Ed Skitt. Yes.
Could I respectfully request that I be the last speaker? I have several things to say, and I believe there's several people who may make comments, and I just want to say that I concur with their comments.
That's fine.
Good evening. Mark Infanti, Solvang resident. I'm here to ask for a better definition of city council goals. So I went to the rebranding session that happened about a week ago, and I asked what the goal was. And I heard the same thing I've heard from the city council: let's increase TOT. That's an aspiration, that's not a goal. I'm an ex-project management consultant. The goal has to state a specific value that you're trying to achieve. So let's say you want to increase the TOT by 5%. CAFR said last year we made $4.3 million in TOT. If you want to increase it by 5%, that's $215,000. How much are you willing to spend to earn $215,000 in increased TOT? I have never heard anybody say what we're going to do in that regard. And since TOT is derived only from hotel stays, the only way you can increase TOT is to increase hotel stays. Since most of the hotels are pretty booked through the weekends, we need weeknight increases in hotel stays to get to the TOT. There has been a lot of money spent. Grand Fondo apparently did a good job. I'd like to see what actually came in from the TOT from that. But there were a couple of things that were going on that I'm not sure that were great for us. For instance, excuse me, the Fall Festival was touted as helping, but it was on the weekend. It attracted primarily young local people. It didn't rent hotel rooms. There's a joke in there someplace, but I'll skip it. I was working at the Arts Connection and heard of a client that was staying at the court, came over and said, I came to Solvang for the charm, not for the circus, and I'm leaving. And they checked out. So we had some missteps here. Second comment, another theme, not a goal, that I continue to hear is how we should be more like Copenhagen. So let's see, Solvang has 5,500 people. Copenhagen has 1.3 million people at a density of 18,000 people per square mile. So I'm having a tough time comparing the two of those, plus the fact that they have one of the highest tax rates and highest cost of living in the world, not in Denmark, in the world. So are we aiming towards raising the taxes and the cost of living that much around here? If not, then I suggest anything other than the old world charm that we get from Copenhagen might be a misstep. Third, there's been an attempt to survey the opinions of the residents, business, and visitors about tourism. The paper survey that went out in the water bill had several mistakes in it. It had 6 different redundant questions. It had columns that were out of sequence. I don't know who put that together, but there was a big problem. I did report it, and the mayor responded back that he will take a look into that. But what the survey didn't ask was if anybody knew what the city tourism goals were and what they thought of the city council efforts towards them. Finally, I noticed that the city council meeting packet was not available online till 6 p.m. Sunday night. But you know, if you look at the agenda that was on several days earlier, it had an affidavit of posting. And what that said? It said basically the city's met the absolute minimum requirements for informing the public. So it appears that one of the goals of the city council is to minimize transparency. Thank you.
Joan Jameson? Followed by Fred Koval.
I just want to say huge thank you to the Agan family. When I called them and asked them if they would get us some trees, there was dead silence on the phone. They said, you want Christmas trees. How many do you want? Oh, between 100 and 150. And there was silence again. He said, I'll call you back. Little did I know that when those trees arrived, they were his trees that he had already ordered. So when we go, or you all go to buy a tree, and it happens to be at the Agans, please thank them very much. And he said, please, if you want to do it again next year, give me a little more lead time.
Fred Koval, followed by Corey Evans.
Somebody leave this here, or is it supposed to be here? Fred Koval, Solvang, Mayor and City Council members. I'm addressing the consent calendar because I'm required to, and this has to do with items, consent calendar item 3E, of which you all should have received a packet of 11 pages today from me. And I did mention in there about a meeting over 2 years ago on July the 10th, and the only thing I want to address on that is on page 5 of 11. It does say about how many water softeners, a guess of them at that point in time. 30% plus or minus 550. Kind of interesting. 30% of what? What I'm leading up to is if you take a look at the pages 8 of 11 and 9 of 11 in that handout, that's the meat of my request. And that has to do with the implementation of the water softeners as written on pages 48 and 49 tonight in your packet. And that issues associated with, first of all, what are the water softener requirements for non-residential use, and that for residential use. And on page 48, I do discuss A and B, especially B that needs some update. Also,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it'd be more appropriate that if there's a desire to pull items E and F from the council, that we pull that later during the consent agenda item, and we can take the staff report and then take any comment that Mr. Koval has on that item.
okay, thank you.
Is there a
Mike.
consensus from the council to do that? Okay, so we'll do that and take your public comment during that time.
Thank you.
Okay. Corey Evans, followed by Savine.
Hello, City Council and Mayor Toussaint. Thanks for letting me speak. I'm here I'm a Solvang resident as well as a business owner here in Solvang. And I'm here to speak on behalf of events in Solvang, in particular the Grand Fondo. I know there's a lot of feelings in town that a lot of the events don't do good for businesses, and I'm here to tell you that the Grand Fondo was a very good event for my business, and I've spoken to several other restaurants and coffee shops in the community that did very well that weekend. So I want to thank you for sponsoring that event, and I look forward to it happening in the future. I also wanted to speak To thank you guys for the great bike path that was the bike lanes that were put in on Viborg. That's a great addition to this community, and I'm really glad to see your commitment to cycling in this valley. And we look forward to seeing the bike lane on Chalk Hill Road widened when that road gets repaved. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Sabine? Followed by Ed Skip.
Hi, City Council and Mayor. I am here to just kind of spread positive vibes for the City Council. I think they've been doing a tremendous great job. I'm very happy. It's really nice. I went to the Fig Fondo just kind of to cheer them on. That's pretty much what I did. I also enjoy talking to people when they're standing there. And one of the visitors, and I talked to several, not just do they come from here, but the family, the relatives also came. And I spoke to one, she came all the way from England to see her son in that race. So it's not just the people that's riding, it's also family members that's gonna come and join in. So, and talk about bikes. Thank you for the Viborg. I do enjoy riding on this. It's narrow. It makes people pay attention, slow down. I like how wide it is, and I'm looking forward to you doing the same thing on Chalk Hill. I've noticed since you had the bike lane on Chalk Hill that I see more and more people riding the bicycle. And every time I ride, I don't do too much because I'm just kind of waiting for more bike lanes to come in, so I feel a little safer riding because people are just not too aware of it yet. So I'm really looking forward to this. So thank you so much for that. I also want to add for the Christmas Fest, Julefest, and the fair. First, the Christmas Fest. Thank you, Katie there, and everyone. It looks awesome. It looks like we are for sure the best little village, Yule town. It's an awesome. I do stop and talk to people too, what they think, ask them to take a picture so they can all be in it. And I've talked to several, and they are thrilled, and they're so excited that they want to come up. And they ask my husband and I, like, what else, when can we come up again? What is there to do? And I think I'm very aware of what's going on. I'm jotting it all down. So there's many things. There's a lot of people from LA that's coming up. I meet a lot of them from LA. And the fair, the last thing I want to say, it was really nice to see a lot of locals, especially teenagers, actually getting the chance to come and get away from their parents and just be with peers and just enjoying that fun time. So the best of cheers to all of you. You did a tremendous great job. So keep it up. Thank you so much.
So would you call that hygge?
Yeah.
Ed Skip?
Thank you, Mayor Toussaint, City Council. At the last City Council meeting, Mr. Koval got up and talked about a private lot that I have. Some facts. Yes, I own the parcel of land above HCA Park. 2, yes, the parcel is for sale. 3, yes, back in the early 2000s, I was fined by the FPPC for an incident where I inadvertently, when I was on City Council, voted on a requirement when they were putting in the skateboard park. I voted on that. It turned out I thought I was more than 500 feet away. As it turned out, I was less than 500 feet away, and so I was originally fined $10,000. I talked to my lawyer. He negotiated with the FPPC, and we got down to $3,000. I considered fighting it. My lawyer said it would be $5,000. So $5,000 to win or $3,000. I paid the $3,000. Fiction. I did not buy the parcel from the city, Solvang Municipal Improvement District, or the county. I purchased the from private individual in the early 80s, and I have a chain of title going back to 1910, and none of those entities have ever owned the piece of property. I am not attempting to sell said parcel to the city. As a matter of fact, it has been in escrow, if it's still may be in escrow, if the guy hasn't pulled out, for over 800 days. I have known Miss Jameson since she moved to the Valley in the early 80s, and her husband since high school. At no time has Mrs. Jameson been involved in my lot trying to either get a certificate of compliance or selling to the city. My last fact is that, yes, I had a meeting with Holly Owen and Roy Hanley back in August of 2018 with my attorney and his associate. What this was in regards to was when I put the lot into escrow back in September of 2017, I discovered that it did not have a certificate of compliance. The lot was created back in the early 50s when the state, or when the county of Santa Barbara straightened the Chalk Hill Road and cut a sliver off of a larger piece of property. I had been working with the planning department from September of September 2017 up through August 2018, and we had a meeting to verify what had been done so far and what additional requirements county was asking for. We came up, they gave me the information. I provided the information to the planning department. They sent the information off to the County of Santa Barbara's surveyor's office, and at that point, it came back, from what I hear, in April, or I take that back, in the end of June, first part of July, and the information from the surveyor's office was that they had no problems with it, and it needed to be, since it was now in the city of Solvang had to issue either the certificate of compliance or a certificate of conditional compliance. At that point, that's where the lot sits right now. I have no knowledge where Mr. Koval gained the information that Ms. Jameson was helping me in my. Mr. Koval, he kind of railed a little bit long. I'm going to please finish.
I'm being very nice, but I got to start.
I'm just
yeah.
buffing. I have no idea where Mr. Koval ended up getting his information, that I bought it from the city, that I was trying to sell it to the city, or Mrs. Jameson was helping me. One last thing. I'm going to skip one quick thing. The Paladinos were unable to come here tonight because they are on a business trip. They are very upset with you, Mayor Toussaint. Last meeting, you prevented Mrs. Palladino from talking, and that is a violation of Civil Code, or Government Code 54954.3, and you stated that Mr. Palladino already spoken, and that she was going to say. You had no idea of what she was saying. You were violating her First Amendment right. She could have been saying something that was completely opposed to her husband. You should not have refused her the right to speak at a public comment period. Thank you very much.
And Chip, can you clarify, did I violate any civil code and what was done there? I had 2 speaker slips from the same business name requesting to speak. I think that, for example, a business, if they wanted to do that, they had 100 employees there now, they could come here and all come speak for that business, and we could be here all night.
I don't believe that you violated anything.
Okay. Kay Dominguez.
I'm here to speak about the Solvang Christmas tree lighting. I've been playing, my band has been playing there at the gazebo since like 2003. And with Alan Satchwell, we had a pretty tight situation going on. Everything was scripted, everything was timed. And my band was, some kids can come and some kids can't, and my keyboard player wasn't able to come. And so Daniel Lahr said, well, where's the keyboard? And I said, well, you know, when I talked to him on the phone, I said, my keyboard player isn't coming, but you can borrow it, because I'm over there at Frederick's Court, really quick, you know, a couple of minutes just to get it. But he wanted me actually to bring it over, and I said, I'm bringing 13 kids, and keyboard is not part of it, my drum sets and all the stands and stools and all that stuff. And so he said, well, he told me 3 times to bring it over, and I said, well, I can't do that. And then I saw all the choir kids there, and I thought, well, I needed a keyboard for the choir to sing with. And I kind of felt bad about that, but I was watching after my kids and getting them ready to go on. And so he canceled the choir from singing. And then I said, oh, okay. So I set up my my band to play, and he said, oh, you can't play. I said, okay, I don't understand that. Why not? And he says, well, if the choir can't sing, you should not be able to play. And I was like, okay, that's not going to happen. We're here. I've got everybody here, drum set, the whole 9 yards, and we'll play. And he kind of lit the Christmas tree. We were supposed to play, and then the tree was supposed to be lit. And he did it early, and I was very confused about the whole thing. And so they were playing canned music. And I said, can you just turn off the music, please? We're here to play, and it would be nice. People are waiting to hear us play. And so he said no. And so Robert Cray over here, he's the dad of one of my students. And I said, would you please find the sound guy and ask him to please just turn it off for a few minutes so we can play. And so he would like to say something to that about how rudely he was received, and I was really, it was very unprofessional about how he talked to me. I was not happy about that at all. Because I've been playing in the Valley forever, okay, and I've never been treated like that. Okay, so needless to say, we got the music turned off. We started to play, and he was like this to me, and I was like, okay, and then we just kept playing, and finished our song, right? And so that was pretty much it. I mean, it went on. I could go on, but I don't want to.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Robert Cray.
Thank you, Mayor and council. So, as Kate just mentioned, all this happened, and we were finally able to persuade the sound tech to turn off the canned music so the band could play. But I got an earful about me, not about me personally, but the production manager and the sound tech it was all about them as opposed to the kids. It took me a while to make them understand that this whole thing is for the kids. And with that, I was, just really taken aback with the attitude of, people who would do that and try to keep the kids from performing. So I think that if possible, maybe the next season, we could find somebody who would think and be more responsive to the kids as opposed to themselves. I think that would be great. Thank you very much.
Mr. Cray?
Thank you.
Can I address him for just a second?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
By the way, thank you for coming up and speaking to us. And this little snafu gave me the opportunity to meet a legend like yourself, so thank you. And beyond that, I'm looking forward to having your kids, the little group, performing at least once or twice more throughout the rest of the Yule Fest.
Fun, yeah.
And that wouldn't have happened without the snafu. So I, for one, am very grateful to you and this weird mistake.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. And we'll follow up about that to make sure things get resolved. That's my last public speaker slip. With that, we'll move on to, yes.
I turned in a slip.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had you on, mixed it with item 7. Andrew Kahneman.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name's Andrew Kahneman. I'm representing Hadston House and Hotel Cork. Also representing Visit Santa Ynez Valley, of which I'm Vice Chairman. I want to thank you, first of all, for going out and agreeing to sponsor the CTS Grant Fondo. I think that by all measures, and especially as we just saw Kirk Nordgren recount what's going on, by all measures, this was a success. It's a great testimony to the council and the mayor and the city's support for valuable tourism dollars that we can bring into the valley that have been neglected for so long. We hear lots of comments from residents and of the valley and of Solvang talking about our bicycle master plan and other things that are going on. There's a lot of dissent in some areas. I think that we've got to look at things practically. This kind of tourism is what we're looking for. We need to elevate the level. We need to have people with higher discretionary income, people that are willing to stay more than one night, that aren't just day trippers coming into the valley. And these are the people that we're looking for. I can also say that as a third-year participant and third-year sponsor, the event couldn't have been better. The comments that I heard uniformly about Solvang, about the hospitality, and certainly about the ride itself were spectacular. The fact that Council Member Jaranis decided to ride as well was interesting. There's talk about a new e-bike category going into next year to get other people involved.
And shorts.
In
I
shorts.
want padded shorts.
Shorts. Cycling shorts. We'll get you in that. But it's appreciated, and I can say I know that Councilmember Waite wasn't able to ride due to an injury to her foot, which she has ridden in the past. I had the pleasure of riding with her the year before. That kind of support goes a long way. It goes a long way, certainly from a business standpoint, but also from a tourism standpoint. When we can have the city supporting something like this and actually members of the council actually riding, that's spectacular. There's no better testament to what this event's about when that happens. So thank you again for your support. We look forward to you as co-sponsors, as the business community, that we continue to do these kind of events that drive business, that's quantifiable with results, so we can see exactly where the money is coming back to the city and to the valley. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item number 2, executive PIO reports and advance calendar.
So we'll start with city manager report and events calendar and then the PIO report. I'd like to start with a couple of items that are related to Yule Fest. As Jacob had reported earlier today, we have discussed the Copenhagen light shows that happen on every Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays at 6:30, 7, 7:30, and 8 p.m., and it's about a 6 to 7 minute show. And so having spoken with IDK and also with the Sheriff's Department, because it creates this little bit extra crowd of traffic, or foot traffic, along with the cars there, we are recommending, in light of both safety and fun, and being mindful of the business community in Copenhagen, doing a soft closure, which will be basically handled by IDK staff, to where they come out during when the music is playing and are monitoring the streets and the major intersections, and then guiding any cars that are coming through there to make sure the public that's watching the show is safe. Now, another new concept related to Yule Fest. We have a proposal from Cinderella Carriages that actually used to be a part of the Riverside show, their light show, that are available for the city of Solvang. This would be something that the city of Solvang itself can consider, and I would actually ask on this particular item to get some general direction, consensus, or otherwise from the council whether they would like to support this. And so the idea would be that this type of carriages could be part sponsored by the city of the St. Lucia parade in the evening. You can see a picture here where it's a nice lit up picture, so we have any more Hallmark opportunities filming, we could utilize this. And the carriages could also be here available through the rest of the Yule Fest. So it would be a test round to see if they can generate enough revenue for them this to be a successful business model. Each carriage costs, it's about $3,000 to bring the first carriage. They have up to 5 available. They can be here for the December 13th for St. Lucia Parade, and as an additional cost of $500 a carriage could stay here additional days through the end of December. So I would ask, this is something that is not on the official council agenda for vote. It is something within the cost of a city manager discretion. But the council, I would like the council, since it's a pretty, something that will be very new and very bright on the streets, I would like the council overall direction and consensus on whether you would like to proceed with this. So if you could just give me some comments during this time, and general nods of would you like to pursue this, and maybe give different options on contract negotiation to where we could say, we give you this money, but we would require you to give us all the sales tickets to up to the amount of recouping our investment.
Right, so I'm going to give credit to ESCO for bringing this to our attention. He's been down to Riverside a number of times and really enjoyed this kind of activity. It's a hit down in Riverside, and he thought it might work here in Solvang. So I contacted them personally and a couple other carriage places. This group was the only one that was available to come on such short notice. The rest had already been booked for the rest of the month. In a nutshell, the idea is to provide a cost-neutral opportunity, if you will, to the community. So essentially, the ticket sales would offset the cost completely of what the city potentially would have to pay if we rented it ourselves. Does that make sense? So in other words, they're willing to come up, as Zini was explaining, and take the risk on the assumption that the ticket sales will fully cover their costs. And then, of course, they keep whatever. If they generate revenues beyond what their expectations, they keep that too, but it wouldn't cost the city a thing. Now, the downside is that they can't come up here for free. There is a risk to them in the sense that if they didn't generate enough ticket sales, the question would be who would compensate them for that risk. So in theory, and again, these are very loose numbers. We were just talking, we looked at, I created a little spreadsheet and talked to Xenia about this earlier. The idea being that, let's assume for the sake of argument, it costs $30,000 to bring them up, and they would be here for the entire weekend, this coming weekend, right?
Mr. Mayor, again, I think the challenge is approval of this is not actually an agenda item.
Mm-hmm.
I had understood that this was an item that's, in the very low thousands and entirely within the city manager's authority, and this was essentially the city manager is going to seek a cost-neutral opportunity here, and if the council wanted to say, don't do it, then I'm relatively comfortable with that. I'm a little worried when you start getting into very great detail about cost, including numbers like $30,000. I had not heard a number.
Well, that
anywhere
number,
in
and
that.
again, unfortunately, this is a bizarre situation where we're trying to discuss this as quickly as we can.
And I'm trying to
And the
keep you from
30,000
violating the Brown Act.
And I don't want to do
So,
that either. But what I'm trying to say is that would be for the entire month.
I think you've probably gone to the edge, and I'm jumping in to keep from going over the edge.
So my only comment is, what if we do? I'm fine with trying something new and seeing what the opportunity is, but I would just obviously be concerned about costs. We're already spending a decent chunk on Yule Fest. We've done a lot of extra things instead of just doing the drone show this year or just the Copenhagen Light Show. We did both. Is that the best carriage for Solvang? I don't know, but maybe some of those aesthetics and stuff could be just. Think about that, and then I just want to be very cautious about any additional monies being spent without a recovery method. That's my opinion.
I need to make one more clarifying statement. If you're just going to do it for this weekend, it is in the thousands. If you're doing it for the whole month, it's a different number.
But you did say you could do it on a trial. They could come up this weekend, and we can see if the people like it.
Exactly, yeah.
I'd
I'm
be
just
okay with
looking for
that.
general direction on
I'm
what.
absolutely for your using your discretion, going ahead and trying this.
And I am as well.
I'm looking, more if is this a concept you're willing kind of to support?
Yeah.
Are you interested in maybe 1 carriage, 5 carriages? What's your threshold in terms of that?
Again, the total cost that was given to us was $13,000.
Chris, I'm trying to keep the deliberations to a minimal right now and within the guideline of this. Zena, I appreciate your transparency and bringing this to our attention instead of just going off and doing something. But I think, as long as you can find a way, for the aesthetics, I think I see here, I don't think anyone's going to be mad at you later. Can we move on to the next item?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to advanced calendar. Today is the last regular meeting of the council agenda, except for December 17th, we have a special meeting scheduled. So just to alert you that as part of your consent agenda is a calendar for 2020. And essentially, we are not, all the meetings for the city council will be scheduled as usual on the second and fourth Monday of the year. And there is about 4 holidays that fall on Mondays. So those customarily are moved to the Tuesday following that day. Moving on to December 17th, you do have a special meeting scheduled for that. Originally, it was thought of to be just the big discussion about marketing and tourism RFP and the policy direction for the scope of that RFP to be issued following the workshops that were held on December 4th. We have moved a couple of other items that were on the agenda for today regarding the PIO. So we're also going to, during that meeting, to schedule the communications update and also the public information officer contract. As part of that presentation, I'm also talking to MasterCard as an example to present a sales data analytics presentation to the council, to where you can see one way of looking at specific data for specific events and how you could measure that going into the future. On January 13, we are moving into all of the financial discussions. So we are going to start that meeting by looking at the comprehensive annual financial report, which is the audited financials from the previous fiscal year, 18-19, and one of the most informative, other than getting a feel of making sure that we have good internal controls and accurate numbers. One of the things that would be presented to you during that conversation is the updated fund balances as of last year for all the major funds. Then we'll move on to the Q2 financial report, and that will be an update on revenue and expenditure trends through December 31. Unfortunately, there is a little bit of a longer lag on receiving data on sales tax, but we will have TOT for the month of November by then. So we've had a couple of events in the month of November, and that would be a good information to look at. Then we'll move on to the conversation about the financial plan and the schedule and getting the general direction from council on how you would like to move on with the next financial plan development. The city historically has been on a one-year financial plan. If the council were to move to a more goal-oriented financial planning, it is actually recommended to do it on a 2-year financial plan, so that is a point of consideration. That also aligns better with the capital improvement program. That is also something that was brought before at a different time and not aligned with the operations and the overall goals of the council. So what might be better, and the recommendations that I would have for the council, is to align the capital improvement program with your operating budget development. That way you can plan those goals and what you achieve within those 2 years. As part of the process, we will also be looking at improving and better aligning the cost centers or the programs so that you can better understand from the money that you do adopt as part of the budget, what is it that you actually receive, how well we're doing in our performance, and what are the services that you're providing. Finally, I will come with recommendations on the financial plan development schedule and milestones. There you could have some considerations as to you would want to have any kind of public engagement as part of that. And also I would recommend that staff bring to the council a conceptual budget for what you would want to achieve or adopt over the next 2 years before we actually come back with the budget to adopt in June. That way we have a touch point where you can give staff direction on whether we're on the right path or not before we need to adopt the budget. There will be a couple of financial policies and maybe others, but one of the items on today's agenda is to look at the grants funding policy and to get a general direction from council on what types of activities the council would like to allow grant funding for, and then we will come back with specific written policy for you to adopt. The purchasing and budget monitoring policies are really more about internal controls and improving some of the efficiencies. Right now, a lot actually stops with a signature from me, so I'm just looking for conceptual approval from council to actually give more discretion to staff, but then improve internal controls and audit mechanisms to where other people can be the final signatories, but we also have better monitoring of it. Finally, we'll have another big financial item, which is the unfunded liabilities. I know we've been talking about that for quite some time, and this would be well aligned to bring back in January after we have some of the latest numbers from CalPERS itself and their financial statements, and we can align that strategy with the financial plan and how the city would like to address the unfunded liabilities.
So just really quick, for the purchasing and budget monitoring policy, just so I best understand that, that would help solve the gap that we have with regard to the practice of overestimating expenditures, underestimating revenue, and then leaving this huge discretionary margin that you can almost do anything and fixing the budgets by the end of the year kind of thing.
Right. Well, one of the awkward, I think, policies in the budget policy, especially that we can fix, is the fact that right now budgets are actually monitored or controlled at department level. Even though, so you can overspend on line items as we go along, and my discretion is limited to $5,000 approval to change budget. So what we want to create is probably something to where you can control budget by type of expenditure. So say, staffing, your contracts, your capital expenditure program. So you divide it into those categories and control it at object level and not just at department level. That will just give you better control without, at the same time, having to approve every single item.
Got it. Thank you.
In January and February timeframe, I don't have exact dates for this yet, but a couple of meetings ago, you had COSMONT come and present their methodology for economic development. So I think this is really the more of the appropriate discussion almost in the financial planning to have that visioning process for Solvang 2.0 through COSMONT and through economic development and other contractors that the city would need to bring along. So at the end of January, beginning of February, COSMONT will be back with the study that they will have performed on the specific site for blended use at the Vetshold site and make recommendations based on their demand and supply analysis of Solvang, and they will be able to tell us some more information about, what do they see as demand that would be supported for the city of Solvang and what kind of blended use they would recommend for that site. They will also make recommendations based on their observations and working with the city as to what type of economic activity they would recommend. So we've had some conversations about increasing TOT, increasing, high dining spaces. Those would be part of the bigger picture conversation that COSMONT will bring into the council to discuss. And those also could lead to future community workshops and continuous discussion on how the council would like to proceed. Now, we will need to look at general plan and zoning plan updates. We are applying for a grant for that, as you know, and those will need to align to essentially support the economic development strategy that the council may develop through this work with COSMONT. Just a quick update on some of the things to get your attention to on the city operations. Our Parks Department is working with Guardian to look at getting a contract through piggybacking on these federal contracts. Within the next couple of weeks, we'll have a proposal and we'll see if we are within the budget, and we'll be able to proceed with the tennis court upgrade pretty quickly as long as we are within that price park. We also based on previous council direction, looking at developing an RFP for the Solvang Park. So that was the idea of having creative proposals. So what we are thinking is bringing to council an item on where we would have a low budget option, kind of some visuals with that as to what you could achieve with a low budget and maybe a medium budget and a higher budget, and get a feel from the council on where you're looking to go with that. We are also about to start the Sunnyfield Playground remodel. On the public works side, South Alisal Road pavement project is about to kick off. That was approved by this council previously. There is no bike lanes with that, which was proposed originally by staff, but there's something called sharrows, where there's basically signs along the road that indicate that it's a shared road for bicycles and for vehicles. Bike lanes could still be added as we are going into the engineering design right now, if council wanted to bring that back. We're also proceeding with the parking lot drainage improvement project engineering, so that would be the first step for creating a parking lot across from the city hall over here. And staff is also working on a grant application for Measure A Safe Routes to School, which would be an improvement at the Solvang School Sidewalk project on 5th and Elm. That concludes my report, and I will hand it to PIO.
By the way, thank you. That was a wonderful presentation, the best I've seen all year. Again, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Toussaint, council members. I'm keeping it brief today. I'm sure you're excited about that. The first report I have is that we do have a couple upcoming new platforms for communication, which we're very excited about. The first one is we have signed a contract with Nixle. It's a pretty popular text notification system. They use it for the OEM, the Santa Barbara Office of Emergency Management. So during all of these fires and mudslides, you may have received texts about that. If you haven't, please do sign up, and then you'll automatically be able to sign up for Solvang as well. So we are excited about that also because it has a built-in audience, and we're hoping to be able to launch in January. Sign-up options will be added to the website, and we will make sure we do announcements everywhere we can to make sure people are aware of that. Communications policy, we have a temporary communication policy pending approval for internal communications. That will keep any confusion internally when people call in. And because of our phone system not being, we haven't done the new phone system yet. So in the meantime, sometimes the phone calls end up in very odd places. I'm always surprised about what people tell me here. Oh, I got a call about this, and it has nothing to do with their department. So this new internal communications policy should help a little bit with that in the meantime while we wait for the new phone system and some other forms of communication platforms that should help. Social media, I'm very excited that we have been growing our Facebook following. So we've got 566 followers, up 92%. Engagement's up 86%. Reach is up 518%. And just showed an example of some of the posts that we put up there. So this is the Yule Fest parade, and I believe I captured every single float in the parade. So hopefully if you were in it, you can see a picture of yourself here. If not, reach out to me because I think I have a few extra photos. But that was exciting to be able to capture that. It was actually a great day for photos because it wasn't raining or sunny. So take a look at that if you haven't already, but it was a great post. 1,024 people were reached, which isn't bad considering we have 566 followers. So we're looking to boost that up and get that to at least a few thousand people. Tourism marketing, public engagement. So it has been very, very busy last month. We had our 3 tourism public engagement workshops on Wednesday, December 4th. I think they turned out very well. It was a very good turnout. Most of the room was filled, and it just increased throughout the night with every workshop that happened. It started with a resident workshop at 6:30, followed by a branding workshop at 7:30, and then a business-focused workshop at 8:30. And that had the highest attendance. And I did learn that for some people it was confusing. The workshop concept sounded, I thought we'd be sitting around kind of all talking. But because of having to keep it cordial and on time, we did have an agenda for each topic. So the branding one was the most like a workshop, where if you see that whiteboard in the back there, we got creative and we wrote down all the icons and landmarks and inspiration behind the brand of Solvang. And I thought it was a great exercise. People seemed to get really into it. The ideas were fantastic, really great engagement and great turnout. I also want to thank everyone who attended. There was not a single comment that wasn't useful. I felt like everybody really was thoughtful and took time to come and give their ideas of what Solvang means to them and where they want to see it go as far as tourism is concerned. So I will be bringing a recap of the workshops next week, Tuesday the 17th, at the special city council meeting for tourism. If you haven't watched it, there is a video link on the cityofsolvang.com under communications department. So far we've had 150 views, which is also quite impressive for a workshop here in the chambers. We have also been sending out surveys. We have a resident survey, a business survey, and a visitor survey. And I have to say, I've never been so impressed with residents ever. Surveys, if you're familiar with marketing surveys, it takes a lot of people to reach out to in order to get a response. So to have over 320 residents, that's not counting any printed surveys received today, that's a huge number of responses. I don't know if you remember, like the Yule Fest survey was out for a while. They received about 100 responses. So I was shocked to see that many residents respond. It's been very, very useful. We have 140 visitors responding and 41 businesses. So if you're a business, I highly encourage you to respond if you haven't yet. And visitors, we are going to continue to increase that. We are giving away 2 tickets to the drone show this weekend and then the following weekend as well to try to increase that traffic because it's hard to get visitors to respond to surveys. I do want to note that there has been feedback about the printed version of the survey, and we do have a link on the website. So if you go to cityofsolvang.com and you go to communications department, if you would like a link to a full 10-page survey, that's going to be in order. What happened was we had 5 minutes to get it into the water bill, and we wanted to save some money and get it into the bill rather than send it separately. So we tried to consolidate it really quickly, and so it ended up going to a separate page instead of the second column. So I apologize for that for anyone confused. Happy to print out another version if anyone wants it. But we do, as we wrote in the printed survey, we do encourage people to fill it out online. It does avoid human error, and it also, honestly, helps save the city money. So we appreciate it. Printed surveys, yes, those are available online. And then we've also been promoting all of this through social media posts, as well as ads, through emails, through every channel, as well as newsletters and websites. So we are on both Solvang USA channels, as well as City of Solvang channels. And the feedback has been great. And I did want to let you know that on Facebook especially, I've seen a lot of positive comments thanking the City Council for reaching out. And then even during the workshop, a lot of people said, you know what, thank you for letting us have a voice. I know at first it's a little bit different. And so I explained that to everybody, this has never been done before. We're learning. We really want your feedback. So if you have come or have not come and you want to give feedback, my email address is pio@cityofsolvang.com. Highly encourage everyone to let us know how we're doing. We're always looking to improve. My second note on the engagement workshops is I'm really hoping we can do quarterly workshops with businesses. It went a really long way. I think businesses really appreciate being heard. It's a busy time of year right now. If we could do another one in a couple of months, we're going to keep that momentum going and make sure we don't lose anybody along the way. Oops. I'm excited to announce that we are going to have a Solvang video coming up here. We're going to be filming on January 6th and 7th. As you know, we contracted with CrowdRiff to get user-generated content for photos, but it's hard to get good quality videos that way, and we are desperately in need of a good video for the City of Solvang website, and then of course we can use it for Solvang USA as well. So we are looking to start filming on the 6th and 7th, and it will be a high-quality 60-second video. We will own all the raw footage, so we can use that, repurpose it as much as we would like. We will use that video for both websites. We'll also use it for B-roll for public relations. If you're unfamiliar with B-roll, a lot of times news channels call and they say, can I have some just raw footage of your town that you can send to me? And right now we don't have any of that from the city side or from the tourism side. The plus for this company is, if you can see here, it's a little bit far away, but the quality of their content is fantastic. The other icing on the cake is that just included in the video purchase, we actually are going to be marketed to 2.3 million followers within the Paradise Network. So it's just a nice little icing on the cake there. And then lastly, just wanted to remind everybody that there is that Highway 154 Safety Town Hall meeting on Monday, December 16th at the Solvang Vets Hall, 6:30 to 8:30, childcare provided, and RSVPs are encouraged. And then again, on Tuesday, December 17th at 6:30 p.m., right here in the council chambers, we will have a special city council meeting about tourism and communications. And that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you, Katie. And those, can you just clarify the additional surveys you're talking about in a few months? Would they be regarding?
Oh, workshops.
Oh, workshops. Okay. All right.
Workshops.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Although I do recommend also considering additional surveys in the future, especially for visitors.
Okay. I was wondering if there's any. I also mentioned I also noticed in Zena's advanced or in her city manager report that she was talking about potential workshops around economic development, especially now that we've engaged Cosmont. And I'm just wondering if there's ways that we can, possibly marry those together, because they run kind of hand in hand.
Absolutely, and actually I believe at the 17th, one great topic to cover would be communications from the city and coming up with a yearly calendar so that we're planned in advance and make sure that we're not biting off more than we can chew and executing everything the best that we possibly can.
Great, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I have not been able to see any pictures from the parade on the Facebook page. So I don't know if I'm looking in the right place.
City of Solvang. You might have been on Solvang USA, which will be posting photos as they come. There have been some, but the majority that I just showed, that was all on City of Solvang. So facebook.com/City of Solvang, all one word.
Do we have any plans for an interactive platform through which we can do these surveys? It seems like you touched on it, but that way people know that we would like them to interact with the city on a monthly basis, if at all possible.
Absolutely. So there's actually two solutions for that, and I think we should go into further detail at the next meeting, but just to touch upon it really quickly, the first will be that CRM platform we've talked about in the last few council meetings. That actually allows the public to, for instance, email council at cityofsolvang.com, and it actually aggregates all of that data, so it's accurate. So we're not just talking hypothetically or anecdotally. We're saying here are the actual numbers, kind of like with the Fall Fest when I did the recap for the Fall Fest. Despite what I have heard a few people say, that was 1,000% unbiased. It was, I went online, I went to every channel I could possibly find, wrote every comment. Same thing with all of the emails. We compiled them all. Now that's not realistic because it takes a lot of time to do that. So what happens with the CRM is it automatically compiles that data for you. So you can look at it all together.
And can we
So that's
differentiate between residents and visitors and businesses and things like that?
We can do it with, that one's going to be mainly residents, honestly, and businesses. It's not going to be so much the visitor. But then through the new website for the tourism channel, that one we can actually incorporate the surveys into our e-marketing. Right now, the challenge is that we have a really outdated website. It's painful, to be honest with you. And then the e-marketing as well is also not set up to the best it could be. So rather than doing piecemeal, just, oh, let's fix it for this week and spending all that time and then having to redo it again in a month. We have it planned out so that it's all happening at the same time correctly. So we should be able to have all that integrated together.
You're going to discuss this on the 17th.
And there's a lot to discuss on the 17th.
Okay.
Thank you, Katie. Daryl, would you please read the title for the consent calendar, item 3?
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Consent calendar, we have items A through F, approval of agenda as presented. Item B is the approval of the Warren Register expenditures report for 2019. Item C is approval of the draft minutes of November the 25th, regular city council meeting. Item D, adopt the proposed city council meeting schedule for calendar year 2020. And now, Mayor, I would like to request that the item be pulled. We notice a couple of corrections that need to be made, so with your permission, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I would like to request that the item 3D be pulled for just kind of clarifying a couple of corrections there. Item E, it was mentioned earlier, Mayor, that items E and F will be pulled for a separate discussion. Item E is an ordinance number 19-0341, amending the Solvang Municipal Code, Title 9, Chapter 2, Article C, use of public sewers. Item number 3F would be ordinance number 19-0342, amending the Solvang Municipal Code, Title 9, Chapter 3, Article C, with respect to water rates and charges. Mr. Mayor, that concludes the consent calendar listing. And again, we need to pull items 3D as well as 3E and F, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I will move to adopt items A, B, and C.
I'll second.
It's been seconded.
Councilmember Diarnes.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Wade.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark.
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint.
Yes.
The motion carries 4-0, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Item 3D, could I get a staff report? Or summary of changes?
Mayor, thank you. I was thinking something else, but with respect to the calendar, there's a correction that needs to be made, and I'll take full responsibility. I must have been looking at another calendar from previous years. On item, the second meeting of January would be January 13th, respectively, and January 27th. I have it listed on the agenda as the 20th, which is incorrect, and I'll take full responsibility for it. And also, the recommendation was to move those dates to the next Tuesday, but that item is incorrect, so we need to approve, subject to the corrections to the calendar, with the new dates of the council meeting being held January 13th, January 27th, respectively, as well as the second meeting in February to be February the 10th and 24th, respectively. So with those corrections, Mayor and Council, you can entertain a motion to approve subject to those corrections.
Okay. I'll make the motion to approve the corrections made by staff.
I'll second it.
It's been seconded.
Councilmember Diarnes.
Yeah.
Councilmember Waite.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark.
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint.
Yes.
The motion carries 4-0, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. On to item E. Could I get a staff report?
Good evening, Mayor Toussaint and council members. Matt Vanderlinden, your Public Works Director and City Engineer. As you are aware, the first reading of the proposed ordinance or code revisions was heard by the City Council at their meeting of Monday, November 25th. And the Solvang Sewer Code has not had a general update in many years. Updating the sewer code at this time is recommended to keep up with current regulations and best management practices and reduce city maintenance costs. Fats, oils, and grease from restaurants cause sewer system maintenance problems and significant increase in city operating costs. The updates address maintenance of grease interceptors by restaurant owners and include other minor edits to the general sewer code. So the fiscal impact to the city is minimal, or actually no fiscal impact to the city, minor fiscal impact to a few restaurants who have outdated greased interceptors. And I will make a note, if you refer to page 46 of your agenda packet, the majority of the revisions that are proposed are relative to section 9-2C-2, types of waste prohibited. And the goal is basically to update that section of the code to provide a little more strict or more restrictions on preventing fats, oils, and grease from entering the sewer system and causing problems in our sewer collection system and also at the wastewater treatment plant. And I was going to mention that Fred Koval made a comment, something about water softeners. So I thought it would be helpful to just mention a little over 2 years ago, through a series of 4 different city council meetings, we updated the section of the code regarding water softeners. And so that was in 2017, so just a little over 2 years ago, that whole section was updated. So this current proposed update does not have any changes in that section. It's mainly the other sections. So I just wanted to comment on that. So that concludes my staff report, and I'm here for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions of Matt? Okay. With that, we'll go to public comment. Fred Koval.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. Yes, specifically associated with this is in your packet that was presented to you, pages 8 of 11 and 9 of 11, which is page 48 and 49 in your packet. And on that, my concern is also associated, as Matt pointed out, 9-2C-9. And that has to do with A and B is associated with for the requirements for non-residential use. And the correction there you can see at the bottom of the page, item B, is that the A and B need to track each other. And that's why it needs to show that B does reflect A, namely that it's inspection of equipment and needs to be added from non-residential uses. Because residential uses starts out on the next page, item C. Now, on page 49, the very first item, C1, is an exact repeat of A. It appears to be really redundant, and it doesn't and it also says of waste from non-residential uses. It's already covered on the previous page. So that needs to be stricken. Next, if you go further on down, it does cover a specific, it's calling out a specific type of water softener. And it doesn't really call out what that water softener might be directly, but it does say that it must have of not less than 4,000 grains of hardness. But it also above it, it says that it's got to be highly efficient, whatever that means. But it does say with diagnostic functions, okay? So I've researched the water softeners, and I can only find 2 on the market that meet these, which is SB 1006 requirements, okay? And so when you look at those requirements and you look at the 2 manufacturers that provide that, Pentane and Culligan, they're very expensive because they have probes now. They have a computer now. They have adaptive use. In other words, based on the water coming in, every month the water softener adapts to what water is coming in from them. And of course, our water is changing all the time, which wells, which rivers, what have you, is being used. So I have an asterisk there, and the asterisk says, here's what that water softener needs to do. If I may have another minute, please. Diagnostic functions. What are the diagnostic functions? And I laid them out here. She'll have adaptive water softening correction and Wi-Fi. Right now, if you go, I go to the Consumer Electronics Show every year for 20 years, the Internet of Things, everything in the house. The water softener is there. It's being controlled by an app. What does it allow? It allows both you, the customer, the owner, and the city to be able to see how good your water softener is functioning. No need for inspections. No need for on-site inspections. It's going to be a big money saver. So that's what it includes here, Wi-Fi. And I talked to the inventor of the Pentane just last week, and he says they're telling him in 2 weeks they'll have software ready to go and hardware for a water softener to put on the market. So we're just a little bit ahead here in demanding what these requirements cover. So that's what page 49, as you see marked up here, covers. I'm going to stay on top of this, and I'll be ahead of it. Thank you for your time on that. I just a little retort to, if I may.
I don't want to get this started going. I'm going to call you up again for item F. So I'm just trying to spread. Did you already? I'm getting a little lost trying to keep up with what you have covering here. Were you only covering sewer right now?
Yes, I'm only covering sewer right now.
So I will let you speak on water.
Okay, thank you.
Chip, did you have a?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Koval, I think, is both he's ahead of his time. I would just note section C, your code always amazes me where there are things that were adopted and didn't make it into your code, and then you have this provision, for example, which at the beginning of section C notes that it's not even effective until January 1st of 2022, so it's not effective for 2 more years. I would urge that you take the action on the updates that are in front of you this evening. Those are bringing your code finally in compliance with state law for those particular sections. And then I believe that staff could work with Mr. Koval between now and before January 1st of 2022 to come up with the times if there are better ways to do things than the way it's stated here for the provisions that are going to be effective in 2 years.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll take this back to the council for discussion and action. Is there any, no? Okay.
Yeah, I got a quick question.
Go ahead.
Chris?
Well, it seems to me that what Mr. Koval is discussing is an idea related to smart cities, right? Essentially, the city would be able to monitor things via this application through Wi-Fi or whatever cellular data system we have. And that would save the city substantially in terms of monitoring and might improve the performance of our delivery and systems and things like that. Is that your thinking? Would you like to address that?
Sure, I just had a few
Mr.
comments.
Mayor, may I just say, again, I hate to be so prosaic, but you only have the ability to work with those things that were in the ordinance on the first reading of the ordinance. So for anything other than what's in the first reading
it would
of the
restart the,
ordinance,
yeah, I get that.
it would restart the time, so you would need to, and you can come back.
But I think we would then lose, we're trying to move on this a little quicker to get some of things taken care of. So I think it'd be appropriate right now to move the approval with the direction for staff to return with additional revisions to the water code as appropriate. And we can do a new sewer code as appropriate. Then we can do a new first reading with those updates. But in the meantime, still get the updates we need right now. Would that suffice?
Yeah, that'd be fine. I just thought it might be helpful, the section 92C9B, it does not refer to residential or commercial because the intent is to allow inspection of both. So I think Mr. Cole's concern is addressed by it being open because it covers both, residential and commercial is the intent.
Okay. Thank you.
I just have a comment.
Yes.
we have our internal departments that are working on this, and my concern is that out of the blue, we have a citizen who is now bringing this to the forefront, and you all are sitting here deciding to work with this gentleman on this when that's taken me totally off guard. It's like, what is Mr. Colville's interest in this with the city? How is he getting involved in this? And why isn't our own internal department dealing with it?
Well, the way I see that is that we have a current ordinance that we're moving forward with. We received some public comment. I think even our city attorney agrees that maybe there's some cleanup that needs to be done here. So it's simply just allowing staff to look into that and make adjustments as necessary, if necessary.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, again, I'm not suggesting that there be any other changes. I'm saying that you've gotten input from a member of the public, and I think that your staff and your council always listens to the input you get from the public. It's just you don't have an opportunity this evening to change this ordinance in that area.
Okay, I mean, I understand that we are listening to the input of the public, but it almost seems to me as though that this gentleman is driving decisions that the council should be making internally. So that's my concern.
I think we have council protocols that the council adopted not too long ago, and there is a process based on whatever commentary or otherwise for council to place items on the agenda. So this, I think, would fall under that. But we are looking for the council to approve the second reading of the ordinance as it was first presented.
So I'll move my original motion. I'll move the approval with direction for staff to return with additional revisions to the sewer code as appropriate.
And I'll second that.
It's been seconded.
Mayor and council, just to be clear, we're adopting the second reading of the ordinance as it is written currently and what is presented in front of you. So that's what the motion is. So just to be clear for purposes of the minutes. Councilmember Waite.
Oh, yes,
Thank you.
To
Mayor
review
Pro
a
Tem
second
Clark.
reading, yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Diarnes.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Toussaint.
Yes.
The motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Okay. Item number F. Can we get a staff report?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. So I kind of titled this the low-income assistance code revisions. And essentially, recent state law requires that any water purveyor, public water purveyor, provide various assistance to low-income customers, including 60-day notice for non-payment, and also there's a provision for a non-payment penalty waiver if the customer's income is below 200% of the federal poverty line. And so again, the City Council heard the first reading of this item at the Monday, November 25th council meeting. And as far as the fiscal impact, there will be minor fiscal impact to this, or we're estimating minor fiscal impact to the city. I think our acting city manager commented that right now somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 a year is the non-collected bills, and that would go up, we're estimating, to maybe about $10,000 per year. And that concludes my staff report. I'm here for questions.
Okay. Are there any questions on the staff report? Okay. But this is more in response to the state mandate that we have coming down.
Correct.
Us becoming compliant.
All the code revisions that we've included for this water code revision are specifically to comply with that.
Okay. Public comment? Fred Colville?
Yes, underwater, realizing, of course, this is Senate Bill 998 is an unfunded mandate from the state. And it has to do with social engineering. That's my comment. I'm upset about this because I, as a ratepayer, do not want to pay for any part of this. No other ratepayer in this city who doesn't pay his bill should not have any of that money to cover that payment from a person that doesn't want to pay, to have that money come out of the water fund. Period. So I made a recommendation in that regard under fiscal impact, page 55, which you have in your packet, my page 11 of 11. And it says that transfer, although it was well worded by Matt, the city should anticipate this slight reduction in revenue, monitor the water fund cash flow, and be prepared to make appropriate adjustments in the future, if needed, to fund this new, and I added unfunded state mandate. And then I added, transfer from the general fund would be appropriate to cover any losses. And you've heard my reason why.
So your only comment was about where the money is being pulled from?
Correct.
Okay. With that, I'll take this back to the council for discussion and action. I'll start just by saying that that was a concern that was addressed the last one. I mean, this is a state mandate. We have to do something in response to it. I think anything else with regard to some of these items require more work than what it's worth. We've made very healthy contributions to the water and general fund accounts in the past for items, the biggest one for water being the new water meters that we have throughout the businesses and the residents. So we will also be having further discussions around the wastewater treatment plant, a lot of costly items there. So I don't want to get down into the details of a specific $10,000 potential item and directing that. I think the way we're currently handling it now is appropriate. So if that's the only concern here with this one, I think that will be addressed naturally. With that, if there's any other comments from the council or discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll move that we approve the second reading of the water code as written.
I'll second that.
It's been seconded.
Councilmember Waite?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Clark?
No.
Councilmember Diarnes?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toussaint?
Yes.
That motion carries 3-1. Thank you.
Okay. On to item number 4, building code update. Can we get a staff report?
I would like to introduce our building official, Stephen Stewart from Wildan, who has prepared this report, and we'll have the presentation.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the council, before you have the introduction in first reading in title only and waiving further readings of ordinance 19-0343 entitled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, amending Title 10 of the Building Regulations of Solvang Municipal Code and adopting by reference the California state building codes and other related codes, adopting local revisions to those codes, including the International Property Maintenance Code, and repealing portions of Ordinance 16-324 related to the building regulations. This is a triennial function that is before all cities and counties. The Building Standards Commission of the state of California every 3 years updates the building codes. We are now looking at the 2019 code. Local municipalities, including Solvang, can make amendments for geographic, topographic, or climatic conditions. And that's it. We can't write our own building code. We have to follow the state mandates. The actual state mandated code will go into effect on January 1st of 2020. Staff has taken a look at those elements and felt that your previous ordinances is adequate to serve Solvang. We've only made a couple of slight recommendations for council consideration. The first one is dealing with the exemption for small shed playhouse buildings. We're recommending that you incorporate in that exemption a maximum height of 12 feet and that there be no plumbing, electrical, or mechanical installed in those types of buildings. If they want to exceed 12 feet or if they want to have MEPs in there, they would need to get building permits for that type of structure. The other recommendations were incorporated in an International Property Maintenance Code. The International Property Maintenance Code is kind of an unusual code in the fact that there is elements of the code that are left up to local jurisdictions to implement. For instance, the requirement for heating in a building. In some climates in our world, this international code, they don't have heating in warmer climates. And so they've kind of left that up to local jurisdictions to incorporate that. So those elements have been incorporated into the International Property Maintenance Code so we can have clarity in that. So with that, I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions in regards to the introduction of this code.
Okay, are there any questions of the staff report? Nope. Seeing none, go to public comment. I have no speaker slips on this item. I don't see anyone that wants to speak on it. I'll take this back to the council for discussion action. Who would like to start?
I just want to say thank you to the staff for doing such a bang-up job and getting things done. This is I've been waiting for this moment for almost the entire year. So I appreciate the hard work and the new face in our midst, and I just look forward to what you do next for the planning department.
Well, thank you. Will Dan's been with you a little over a month and a half, time-wise. And so one of the first tasks the city manager gave me was to prepare this ordinance, and we tried to get it in front of you as quickly as we could.
Great.
With her prodding, and I thank her for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to receive and file the ordinance number 19-0343, amending the Solvang Municipal Code relation to the 2020 State Building Code, and schedule the second reading.
I'll second it.
It's been seconded.
Councilmember Wade,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Diarnes,
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint.
Yes.
That motion carries 4-0. He will be coming back for second reading at the next meeting. Thank you.
On to item number 5. Can we get a staff report?
So I will start off on this item and then hand it over to Steve for a little bit more in-depth discussion. And it's been on our advanced calendar. So we are recommending that council would provide staff with direction regarding the amnesty program for community development. We are making one very specific recommendation that you could take action on today, which is basically waiving any penalties for both residential community and commercial for any projects that were done without a permit. So the proposal is that the council implement an amnesty program starting on January 1st as a celebration of New Year through June 30th, through the end of this fiscal year, essentially, where we would state that we would not issue any penalties to those who want to come to the city during that time and actually get permitted for those non-permitted activities. And Steve will take you through a few other considerations that you might direct staff to come back with in regards to potential additions to this amnesty program.
Thank you, Manager. Yes, Mayor, members of the council, before you have a discussion item dealing with the amnesty program. This has been a quick work in progress. We've been working on it last month again, trying to bring something forward to you. I've been working with our Community Development staff to get their thoughts and recommendations on what we could bring before you for consideration. And I think this will be a continued work in progress for a little while under your council's direction on that. With that being said, I want to make it abundantly clear that staff is more than willing to work with applicants to help with the legalization of work that has been done without the benefit of permits or inspection. I have a longstanding record in my background of having that kind of hands-on experience helping applicants through the process of sometimes difficult code process. We have actually the benefit today that we always did not have, and that's the fact that we have the historic building code for our older buildings over 50 years old that we can utilize to assist with archaic materials and methodology in the construction that the code would allow. We also have something called an existing building code incorporated in the state building code that we can help with the legalization of property. And the International Property Maintenance Code is another wonderful resource that we have that we can help with bringing compliance with certain types of code violations. So staff is willing and ready to assist in that area, and I will personally take the lead to help that move forward as we move forward. With that being said, I think there's some other things that we can take a look at in regards to maybe getting council direction on is and bring back some reports on that. One of the things that is been brought to our attention is maybe we need to look at the parking regulations, particularly in the downtown area. The village. I'm used to calling it a downtown area, but in the village area, and that maybe take a look at some creative ideas there that we can bring back for council direction, if you're willing to take a look at that. The other thing that I would like to have you to consider to have staff bring back, and that's to take a look at our outdoor dining experiences. Maybe we can look at expanding that area, doing some other creative things there to help facilitate outdoor dining area. I've had the opportunity to walk downtown and see that experience, and I think that there's some flexibility with council direction that we can take a look at. And there's some other elements on that we can probably bring forward too if the council wishes for us to take a look at. But we'd like to implement this program starting next month and work forward to that. And I would assume that I will be back in front of the council at some point to give you an update on where we're at on that, and maybe ask for an extension of time if that's appropriate. But I see this as a little bit of a fluid element. And keep in mind, I'm kind of new on the block, and we need to work through some of these elements too, and I want to help do that.
Great.
With that, I'll conclude my comments and answer any questions the council may have.
Are there any questions of the staff report?
How fast can you move?
I used to move really fast, but I'll give it my best shot.
Well, again, you brought some things to my attention, which was the problem with parking in the village area. We need to fix that problem as soon as possible, or at least address it. And then the second thing you brought up was the patio thing. I don't know who came up with the idea, originally the policy, but it just doesn't work, especially in this day and age. And we have this wonderful weather, California climate. We should take advantage of that every chance we get. I'll talk to you later about a particular business who has problems with the parking and the patio problem at the same time, and hopefully you'll help them get that taken care of.
Be happy to talk to you.
Are there any questions of the staff report?
No, I like the fact that you brought that up. I was waiting where that was, kind of apples and oranges, because the parking, and it's great that you're letting us know what you're doing going forward. I certainly hope that people do take advantage of this builder's amnesty, because I like it very much. I work in that
So, questions of staff report? I'll go to public comment.
now.
If we could follow that
I'll
order a
wait.
little better.
Thanks.
Okay. I'll go to public comment. I have no speaker slips. I don't see anyone interested in talking on this in the room. I'll take it back to the council for discussion action. Robert, would you like to start?
Nothing. I like it.
Okay.
Well, I'll make a quick comment, which goes to what Robert was saying. I know that he campaigned on the amnesty issue, and I support that completely. And here we are, finally getting it done, thanks to, I mean, my credit goes to Xenia for making this happen. I don't know why it took so long under the previous city manager, but thank you again.
Karen?
I'm in favor of it.
Okay. Well, I don't know if there's much more that needs to be said. I have a motion I've drafted here. I'll move to direct staff to initiate community development amnesty program as recommended by staff effective January 1st, 2020, and return with additional revisions to municipal code as necessary, as well as working with any organizations, architects, real estate agents, contractors, residents, or businesses that could help facilitate and workshop the needs of the program. I love the ideas around reevaluating some of the parking options. I believe we've already started some of those motions. So the synergy is great, as well as the outdoor dining experience. So I think that goes hand in hand. With that, there's my motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been seconded.
Councilmember Wade,
Yes.
Councilmember, correction, Mayor Pro Tem Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Diarnis.
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint.
Yes.
The motion carries again 4-0. Thank you, Mayor.
On to item number 6. What time is it? Okay, we can probably get through this. Okay, item number 6, can we get a staff report?
Item number 6, a municipal code update. There's basically two main parts to this report based on previous council direction to come back with municipal code updates as we notice some of the things that need to be brought to par. We would like to continue to bring different portions of municipal code for updating as we can address them. This particular item alerts you to the fact that the municipal code needs to be recodified. So staff is working actively on getting a contractor that can do that for us and make sure our code is appropriately codified. And the second portion of this report is a proposal to come back with an ordinance to update the specific municipal code section, which is attached to your report, which deals with maintenance of property. So we have mostly city attorney has reviewed this section and has made some recommendations to streamline the process to address some of the properties that are essentially, it's kind of the closest equivalent to a blight ordinance here that you have in this section. And this is the section that proposed changes would streamline the process of addressing those blight issues in the city. There was a section that had to do with appeal by the council, or that used to go to Board of Architectural Review, actually, that has been stricken. And there is you could give some feedback as to staff, to direct staff to develop a new procedure for the appeals to go directly to council, and city attorney might have some additions to this report.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, again, we're looking through the municipal code for at least those low-hanging fruit that we can get to right away. The code is a mess, as we've discussed many times. In this instance, there was some discussion about the possibility for adding what's sometimes referred to as a blight ordinance. One of the things I find is that there are provisions of your code where I think there was a good intention back in the 1980s, and it just hasn't been revisited since that time. This is one, you have provisions that require maintenance of both. It's called a vacant property. I'm not sure why, because it is just a maintenance of property, period. So it includes both vacant property and buildings. We've added a couple of things to this. One in particular, because of Yule Fest, we noticed that there are a whole lot of the lights that have been added to buildings along the edges of the buildings and rooftops that aren't being kept up. There are lots of other exterior lights throughout the city that aren't being kept up. So one of the things that I would note that we added here is that in addition to requiring that buildings with broken windows be repaired, we're adding that buildings with burnt out or inoperable light fixtures would need to have those repaired. The other probably biggest change that we're suggesting here is right now your code section that again deals with maintenance requirements then provides an appeal process where when the city determines there's a need to maintain a property, the property owner can appeal, go to the Board of Architectural Review, and submit a plan for screening the property that hasn't been taken care of or maintained. And they're allowed to just get a screening approval. So sort of very much an out of sight, out of mind process here. We're suggesting that you get rid of that process and instead have more typical to this type of ordinance, and as is provided in your administrative procedures process, an appeal to the city council for somebody who doesn't want to make those repairs to their property. And again, we would need to bring this back as an ordinance. We wanted to present this conceptually for you and get confirmation that this is one of the things you'd like us to work on in the next month and bring back to you.
Got it. Are there any questions of the staff report? Okay. Seeing none, I'll take this to the public for public comment. I have no speakerships on this item. I don't see anyone in the room that wants to speak on it. I'll take it back to the council for discussion action. Who would like to start?
I'll just start by saying the idea with the lights I'm very, very pleased with, and I wish we could go forward with that because there are a lot of businesses in town that don't have a full array of their lights on.
Okay.
Is there a way we can provide some kind of an incentive instead of a penalty? Some kind of a program. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out for an idea. We want to encourage all the businesses to participate.
Sell lights at cost?
I don't know. Maybe some kind of a discount on their taxes. Like if they invest $200 in their lights, maybe we can give them a discount on their tax for that month.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, something that you may want to consider again on the idea of selling lights at cost. I haven't researched this in any detail, but there is an interest in having lights that are night sky compliant. You might be able to find that there is some supplier who you could get night sky compliant lights that fit, generally those light sockets, and you could provide those at cost. That's something we can look into.
Like do a bulk purchase and then
before
provide them.
January, right?
Yeah.
Or the Big Brother state could pay for it themselves.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Clark, I suspect that was in jest. So,
Karen, do you have any comments?
No, I mean, I think we have very good contacts with individuals who could direct us to suppliers for night sky compliant lighting.
Okay.
Good.
I'll make a motion that we move to direct staff to return with amendments to the city code sections 531 through 535 as recommended by staff, and direct staff proceed with the recodification of municipal code to address failures over the past 20 plus years to keep the code updated with council actions. I'd like to note that I particularly like the section about requiring maintenance of burnout or non-function exterior lighting. I think that there should be something regarding the dark sky initiative, for example, like we just talked about, the bulbs that kind of keep the light from going up in the sky. That's my motion.
I'll second that.
It's been seconded by Robert.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Tim Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Diarnis?
Yes.
Mayor Tucson?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Okay. With that, I'll call a 5-minute recess. We're going to hit our timeline on the video and then let Patrick fix that and we'll come back.
I did find them, by the way. I was just on the wrong site. I keep it. When I go on Facebook, I keep it.
I think it's impressive that we have the 3 big bathrooms that we do have in town. I mean, you know, with the family bathrooms and all this stuff, that's a great thing. It's a great thing. Let's go, Chris, come on.
Chris.
Esco, you make a great Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Right, that was ready?
All right, we're going to resume the meeting here. We're on to item number 7. Can I get a title readout and staff report?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, item number 7 is the Board of Architecture Review Policy Direction. The City Manager will present the staff report. Thank you.
So the recommendation of the staff is to direct staff to proceed with proposal to eliminate the Board of Architecture review and return as part of a municipal code update. This is another item that's related to almost to the previous item as well, that has to do with municipal code update and a lot of clarifications. As council directed us to look at potentially combining or those specific functions of the Board of Architectural Review as well as the Planning Commission, when we looked through the records of the documents, you have the 2 attachments. The Planning Commission actually has a municipal code that's in our code and published that does clearly state the function, the membership, the pay, and their specific duties that they're supposed to perform as part of their serving on the commission. Now, when we look at what does the Board of Architectural Review does, we only found a resolution that does say that there's 5 members and states the membership and the term of service. However, it does not state what the Board of Architectural Review should actually be. And it references a municipal code section that when you go to that municipal code section does not exist. So that's where we are, and our recommendation is to come back with an update for municipal code update and to look at transferring the functions that the Board of Architecture Review currently performs to the Planning Commission. And before we do that, we will do a thorough review to make sure that we capture every aspect that where Board of Architectural Review is mentioned. One of the items you just saw in the prior council item was Board of Architectural Review actually serving as an appeals board. So those would be the type of updates that we would comprehensively bring forward to you.
Okay. Are there any questions of the staff report? Seeing none, we'll move to public comment. Our first speaker is Jack Williams, followed by Elsa Marie Peterson. Oh, okay.
Jack Williams, resident and business owner. I would like to urge you to keep the BAR. I think it performs a very useful function for the city. It allows transparency for people to understand what is going on as far as what our codes are and how they're being enforced. The Planning Commission is completely separate thing and requires a different skill set than the BAR does. So, and as far as the municipal code, I was not aware that it was not in there. But one of the things you could consider when you update the municipal code is putting it in instead of deleting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Richardson, followed by Joan Jameson.
I don't know if you understand the purpose and the history of the Board of Architecture Review. The forefathers of this city understood what standards were regarding the Danish culture and Danish architecture. And the Board of Architecture Review, in my mind, was created to hold to those standards. If you recall, if you understand that this town is a really strong market, and there are those that want to capture the market and do it in the least expensive way they can. And eliminating the Board of Architecture Review may allow them to do that. And as Jack Williams said, there are specific skill sets in the Board of Architecture Review that don't exist on the Planning Commission. I was a member of the Planning Commission at one time, and we didn't have an architect. We didn't have an engineer. And we didn't have a land use expert. So what I'm telling you is that it will be a mistake to eliminate the Board of Architecture Review. The signage you see in the cities, the paint schemes you see in the city, and other aspects of the architecture are a result of the Board of Architecture Review and should be continued. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan Jameson, followed by Aaron Peterson. Okay, but at some point, because I have people come, oh, can I go here? I can't do that all night. But yes, I'm just, yeah. You're
Hey, good evening. Aaron Peterson, City of Solvang. I'm currently on the Planning Commission, but not speaking on that behalf. I've served on the Board of Architecture Review. I own businesses in town, own a landlord in town. I'm an applicant of signs, applicants of buildings, applicants of remodels, and I have lots of tenants that I deal with. I say all this to say I know the system. I know the system on the BAR. I know the system on the Planning Commission. Been on for probably 15 years in total. I know we're in 3 minutes, so I'm going to hurry on through it. Tourism is our industry. I don't have to tell anyone that. Tourism is our key. We don't have a prison. We don't have a university. We don't have a tire factory. We're not a suburb of a city where the people commute down to work 30, 40 miles away. Tourism is our industry. Like it or not, it is what gives us our money. We are a small, unique town. We have lots of competition out there. We have Morro Bay, Carpinteria, Avila Beach, Lake Arrowhead, Catalina Island. We've got Pismo Beach. We have Ojai. Some of these towns that we compete with in these places are natural beauties. They've got an ocean, a beach, a lake, a river. They have a Grand Canyon. They've added to those with things like ski runs and amusement parks and harbors and little towns that have Disneyland rides. We don't have that. What do we have? Why do people come to Solvang as a unique little town? We sat through all of this last week on the whiteboard and listed what's unique about Solvang. What is so great about Solvang? Why do tourists come? I don't think anyone's against that tourists come. I don't think anyone is as a loss for why they come. It's unique, it's small, it's European, it was started that way. We want to continue to do that. But design of our town, the architecture, the signs, and the design of our town is paramount. There are things out there we can't control. Traffic. We can't control floods in Santa Barbara, fires in Santa Barbara that stops tourists from coming. We would never want to control, and I've heard people say, what type of shops can come into town? We're not a mall where we get to set the standard and say we won't rent to you and you. Anybody's welcome to come. Any background, any types of shops, rich shops, poor shops, restaurants that are fast food, restaurants that are sit down and very expensive. All we can control in our town is our design elements. That's really what we are. We're not even that Danish any longer. I grew up here. A lot of my friends had both parents from Denmark. That's not that way anymore. My kids are extremely Danish because their mother's from Denmark and I'm only half Danish. There's not that many Danes any longer. So what are we? We're a small town in America, in Southern California, that's a melting pot of tourists, a melting pot of shop owners. All we have that makes us unique and different is our design. That is our beach. That is our Morro Bay Rock. That is our ski lift. That is our mountain. That is what we are. Without it, it goes away. We all agree. So now the question is, how do you enforce that? How do you make sure and ensure that that's going to be held to a high standard? Do you do it from a planning commission? Do you do it from a BAR? Do you do it from a combination? Do you eliminate a BAR, much as, say, Lompoc doesn't have a BAR? Well, then who's doing it? A planning commission. I submit to you, a planning commission, which I sit on, as an ex-DA attorney, very, very strict on numbers. We deal with zoning. We deal with mixed use. We deal with height, size, lot coverage, parking, access, setbacks, diversity, traffic studies. We deal with black and whites. The BAR deals with some square signage sizes, some height limitations, but they don't. They deal with awnings, colors, buildings, landscaping, umbrellas, colors, textures, location, size of lettering. Totally, totally different than what a planning commission deals with. It is a different skill set. It would be like Ford Motor Company having a design department. They also have a safety department, and they have an engineering department, and they also have an EPA compliance department. And then you take the design department and throw it away and say, let's just combine it with the employee compliant department. You know, Fred Colville said a lot of good things. He went exactly
I
2
know.
minutes over, so give me another minute and a half.
I'm
and he
giving
talked
you-
about soft water tanks, for goodness sake, which was
Aaron,
very interesting.
Aaron, I'm giving you a polite warning, but again,
I heard the beep.
At some point, I'm going to get to the.
Give
you
me 2 minutes,
First, I
like
gave
Fred
Ed
did, and
Skip
I'll be
extra
absolutely
time.
fine.
Then Fred Koval comes up the next meeting. He wants extra time. Then,
But you gave it to him at this meeting.
At some point, I'm going to have to say no more. I'm just, but I was giving you the polite.
Okay,
Just wrap it up.
I got it. I heard the beep. I'm rushing through this. 3 minutes is really tough because it's a BAR. It is something I'm extremely passionate about, and I can tell you, there's a lot of people that aren't going to be happy with the city if what we do is we decide to streamline our city at the expense of our design element, at the expense of combining it with the planning commission. They're just not going to be. A lot of us have invested tons and tons of years on lots of commissions, millions of dollars, employ over 120 people, not going to sit back and say, okay, gosh, let's just experiment with eliminating a Board of Architecture review in our city. We're going to protest? No, but there's an election next November, and people will talk with their voting. Some people who don't want to run have no interest in running. Want this planning department and commission and our city council to be very successful, might run if they disagree with you guys on something that's so fundamental, because they will be angry. I'm angry. I think it's insane that we're even talking about this. Codify it, do a better job. I would agree with the city staff that says that it's a mess. I bet on it. We've been fighting it for years. Clean it up, codify it, make it stronger.
Thank
I
you.
would encourage you to run.
Lorraine Thompson. Oh, I'm sorry, Joni. Yes, Joan Jameson first, followed by Lorraine Thompson.
Aaron wore me out. I'm as passionate as he is, but I don't have the gusto to do it. Planning Commission is responsible for the nuts and bolts of the city. BAR is responsible to keep the city beautiful and pleasant. In the general plan, we have land use, circulation, housing, conservation, open space, noise, and safety. That's what the Planning Commission does. We, as a BAR, get to choose the colors, help them design their signs if they need help. We get to help them with the materials they're going to use. We give them direction that continues to make this city special, and it is special. People come from all over the world to see Solvang because it's unique. There's not another place like this in the state of California, and I think it would be a real shame if you combine both of them. Different mindset. There's the creative artistic, and then there's the nuts and bolts over here. They don't necessarily work well together. And I would admonish you, it is very bad business to get rid of the BAR. And I'm ashamed that you're trying to do it.
Nancy Emerson. Oh, I'm sorry, Lorraine, followed by Nancy Emerson. Yes, sorry.
Thank you. I'm Lorraine Thompson. I own Valley Sign Company. I've been creating signs in the Valley for over 30 years. I'm not good at public speaking, but I am good at making signs. I'm not totally clear as to the difference between Planning Commission and BAR, but it was helpful to hear Joni's explanation. My position would be probably more advocating for my customers. Is your proposal, is that going to save them money, or are we going to end up with a higher fee? $150 right now for a sign permit is, I think it's high, it's not exorbitant. But if that goes up, I think that's unfair to the new shop owners. A lot of these people on very tight budgets. We're already asking them in the village area to spend a lot more money on carved signs that represent and maintain the aesthetic quality of that old town, high quality look that you all want. So to ask them to take on 15, 20, it'd probably end up being more like about $50 more. But anyway, I would also be concerned about combining agendas with Planning Commission that I'm going to guess when they have an item that comes before them probably requires a little more back and forth discussion. I have no idea. I've never been to Planning Commission meeting, but the BAR meetings run very smoothly. I mean, it's an exception if you are in front of the BAR for more than 10 minutes. I mean, we're in and out. We do a good job. The gals at the city are very good at what they do, and it's great that a lot of them are able to do over-counter permits now. I think that's very good streamlining. But I also think that the BAR is a volunteer, isn't it?
Sort of.
They get paid.
But you're not elected.
Correct, your point.
So to me, that's kind of a heart of a volunteer. I don't think they're making a lot of money doing that. I think they're doing it because they love this city. They want to make a creative impact. They have great ideas. So I just think that it would be a mistake to combine those two. I think Joni's comments were probably right on. They're kind of two different animals. And I don't know that it is really that great of a burden to the city to keep them alive and well. I read something about that we're having trouble getting people to serve on the BAR, and I don't live in the city of Solvang. I live in Los Olivos, and I don't even know if it's possible, but you have a small pool to call from to serve on that, and I don't know if you can expand that to other places in the valley. But anyway, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't believe you do this twice a month, this kind of hours. Thank you.
Nancy Emerson.
I've not been quite sure what I wanted to say tonight. I looked up, and Carpinteria, Goleta, Santa Barbara, Solvang, and the county have BARs. Buellton, Guadalupe, Lompoc, and Santa Maria do not. I think there is something to be said for BARs. And so I don't think you should lightly make a decision to do away with it, particularly assuming that the Planning Commission is underutilized and therefore could take on some more work. Because I know that when we go into the general plan update, they will carry the load for that. And I think the people who've commented, it is two different tasks. That said, the BAR that I observe religiously is the county one in the central area. And I have been very impressed, but that one is all professionals with one exception. And so it's a rather different situation than we have in Solvang, where we do not have as many professionals to draw from as they do from the larger county area. I think that expertise is valuable, and if we're going to keep the BAR, I think that we need to try to solicit, to the extent we can, some of that expertise on the BAR. The BAR, I think, does a particularly good job with signs because they have very specific guidelines. it seems to me that one of the problems for them when they approach new developments is that they don't have the checklists and tools that they may need to have to work on those kinds of projects. So I think that if you're going to be working on the code, you need to be looking at some of these kinds of tools to help them do the best possible job. And the other thing is that my reading of the attachments to the agenda was that the BAR reports to the City Council rather than the Planning Commission. And particularly in the area of new developments, it seems to me that it should be reporting to the Planning Commission because the Planning Commission does deal with new developments eventually. So those are my comments. And I'm just can't say, well, you should or you shouldn't. But I just want you to be really careful.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. That's the end of the speaker slips. Mark, I'll let you speak.
I'll make it quick.
It's okay. I'll give you 3 minutes. You haven't spoken yet.
Mark Infanti, Solvang. Several items. Obviously, I'm going to tell you that I'm for keeping the BAR. I did an analysis just off for the heck of it, put it together, and gave a copy of the spreadsheet to the city clerk, Daryl. And basically what I did was I said, okay, here's how much it costs to run a meeting for the BAR. Here's how much it costs for the Planning Commission. If I combine them, taking out that there's duplicate people in it, added it all up, what did it come up with? It cost $6,500 this year, depending on the cancellations. And I went through the minutes, went through the YouTube, got how much time it spent and everything else. It would have cost an additional $6,500 this year to run a combined meeting. So it costs the city more. And as you heard before, there's a possibility that it would actually increase the cost to the businesses that have to come before the joint planning commission, if that was the case. So it's going to cost the city more, it's going to cost the businesses more. That's an issue. I don't think this is a wise move. I read the thing that said there's not enough people for the BAR. I don't think that's really a true statement at all. We went through a couple of choices. Had you followed your own policies, that wouldn't have happened. That people couldn't stay on the BAR. And so that was a unique issue that hasn't existed in the past. So I think this needs to be considered much more seriously. Keeping both, it seems to me, to be the most effective way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. With that, I'll take this back to the council for discussion and action. Who would like to start? And I don't know if there's any clarifications from staff on any of the questions that were raised here tonight, but I'll afford you that opportunity.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I would just note your staff needs some direction. You have a section 2.0. I don't know why no one ever noticed before, but the section 2.0 is very clearly the section, it's entitled Boards and Commissions. And there are 3 subject matters in there: the Planning Commission, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and then something called Emergency Management, which I would just note, that's another one of the weird things about the zoning ordinance, is you get things just sort of dropped in there in various places. So you either need to create a Board of Architectural Review or not have the sections which sort of vaguely through here sometimes say that things go to a Board of Architectural Review, which is not actually created by the municipal code. Then you've got a section which is definitions. The definitions section defines things including the Planning Commission, it defines the City Council, it tells you what the rights and responsibilities and process is. There's no Board of Architectural Review in the definitions. There is, oddly, 2 pages in the section called Administration and Enforcement that then talks about Board of Architectural Review, but it's like really vague and generic. I like hot dogs and apple pie kind of discussion. So there's a need in here. I would, if you direct us to come up with the Board of Architects review in your municipal code, I would love, for example, to have Aaron Peterson help me understand and write something in there, because I keep hearing this, we know how it works and we know what it does and we know all these things, but someone coming to your city and picking up your municipal code wouldn't know that. It's sort of almost the definition of relational process is, if you've been through it enough times, you know how it works, and otherwise you don't. So again, we either need direction to take out the relational situation and put it in here clearly, or not have it in here, but it needs to be one or the other, I would urge you. Thank you.
Thank you. I could.
Mayor, if I may, just a point of clarification as well. What the city attorney is really interested in, because I had this conversation earlier with a member, with someone who came up to speak, and the conversation was the BAR created, yes or no? And I think we was clearly established that the BAR is only established by practice, not legally by way of any particular ordinance. We couldn't find anything in the municipal code, and I went through the municipal code with the person that came up to the podium, and I pointed out the sections that are in conflict with each other, and nowhere we could find anything that relates to how the BAR was created by way of formal ordinance. However, there's this resolution here, 93-268, which speaks to the Board of Architectural Review, but this is only a resolution. It's not as legally binding as an ordinance. Furthermore, what I have seen, resolutions are not typically codified. So to make a long story short, the BAR, and I think the person is sitting in the audience knows what I've already articulated, that the BAR appears to not have been either not created legally or was created by a resolution that is not binding, and that's how they have been operating since 1993. So the city attorney is correct. We can either clean it up and make it a formal ordinance, just like we have planning commission and parks and recreation, or you can do something else. But I think we've already established that, number one, it has not formally been created. Number two, there are conflicting sections. If I may also call to your attention, this resolution says section 1411.14, and when you go to the municipal code, the section 14, Title 14, which references emergency management, doesn't even go as far as 14.11. It goes only to 14.5. So definitely there's a problem with how this process was created originally. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and again, I'm not making a policy recommendation one way or the other, just telling you the need. But another, for example, that jumped out at me when I did find these 2 pages that talk about the BAR in what its jurisdiction includes, it has a carve out already that any other exterior alteration to be determined to be minor by the Planning Community Development Director does not go to the BAR. So again, I'm back to the relational situation you seem to have here. If sometimes your planning director, and I've found this on other projects, historically some of the planning directors decide that things are really important and need to go to the BAR, or for example, to the Planning Commission when a project expires, or to other places, and other times they don't. And this is just one of the things, your code sometimes is really, really tight and specific, and people can't have a patio more than 300 square feet. Other times, if you can talk the planning director into deciding you don't have to go to the BAR, you don't have to go. You don't have to get permits at all. So again, we need direction on what you want us to do. Thank you.
Right, and I would just like to agree with everything that was just said, and there's obvious clarity in needing to develop what is that function and when is it minor and when does it go to the BAR or not. But there's also been some, I think, discussions before in relation to the Planning Commission, the BAR, and the amount of time and efficiencies that it takes. So as we develop that new process, that might be one of the policy considerations from the council, as well as the expertise and only Solvang residents being able to serve in that role.
Right, right.
One of my questions was, is it okay to have members of the BIR that are not exactly in Solvang city limits? It's just speaking to the concern.
We discussed it before.
Earlier that about finding qualified assets.
Mayor Toussaint, members of the council, I have seen other jurisdictions who allow members, particularly a Board of Architecture Review, who are not constituents within a city or within a jurisdictional area. So you could do that. Again, right now it's wide open because there's nothing in your code which actually requires them to be anything at all. None of the provisions related to the BIR actually exist in your code. So you could have them, I mean, they can be city residents, they can not be city residents. I'm not sure exactly how they're being paid because there's no provision that even created the board. So this is pretty wide open right now.
Zena, did you have something that you were?
I just want to mention that the language, which does not exist in the municipal code, so it's not necessarily a legal requirement, but that language regarding the members having to be residents of Solvang comes from this ordinance that then is not, or resolution that then is not codified in an ordinance in the municipal code.
According to the previous attorney, he openly said in one of the, I guess in writing or in a meeting, I can't remember which one, that no, there's no requirement for them to be residents of Solvang. And I asked the question at the time because I was trying to find architects or engineers that could then help out, both in the Planning Commission as well as the BAR, and there just wasn't enough either interest or expertise in the city of Solvang. So, well, it doesn't matter.
I'm sorry, please don't respond to the room.
I get it. But at any rate, what I see, what I'm hearing is that this created a situation, there was a potential, a great deal of abuse, abusive discretionary authority by one or more members within the planning department. Is that correct? Because then it became more of who you know, and I did see some things with respect to permitting where things got done lickety-split, and other times, well, not so much. And it was kind of weaponized in some instances.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, again, I'm going to try not to go into politics on this. I'm just going to comment that there's certainly, again, one of the challenges is it's not even a creature within your municipal code, and so it has kind of lived by practice. And there are some provisions, but then there are broad exceptions to the provisions. And when you have the exceptions as broad as they are, from review of some of the past project approvals, it seems fairly clear to me that there have been staff actions that have sometimes sent projects to the BAR for review, sometimes determined that a project is, I guess, probably determined that it was an other exterior alteration determined to be minor by the Planning Community Development Director. And again, there's nothing else that would tell me when something is minor and when something is not minor. I have something that I'm reviewing today where there was a time extension granted for a fairly major project where I cannot figure out how your city granted that time extension. It seems to have been wholly arbitrary on the part of the planning director.
Purely discretionary.
Arbitrary.
And discretionary.
Discretionary is something where discretion is granted. I find nothing in the code that would grant that discretion.
So then it was abused. The authority was abused.
I'm going to continue to use the word arbitrary. But again,
We're talking about the Board of Architecture review right now, not the Planning Commission, correct?
I was
it's
not talking
okay.
about the Planning Commission at all.
Right, right.
I'm talking about actions.
That's right.
You're given, this part of the ordinance gives broad discretion to the planning director, to your staff. And it seems like you have the circumstance where some things have again, it's by practice, not by code. And so I'm going to keep bringing myself back to your staff needs direction, whether it has to be fixed. So either we fix it and create a Board of Architecture review and make it very clear, or you direct us to go a different direction. And we need your direction one way or the other.
How does this work with, I mean, one of the complaints I was getting was about, for example, umbrellas at some of the businesses around town. And the complaint was that, for 10 plus years at least, or in some cases 20 plus, these umbrellas have been out in front of these businesses. And then all of a sudden everyone started receiving notices that none of their umbrellas are BAR approved. And then they start getting fined for this. But how is it that you have these situations where umbrellas are there forever, and then suddenly when the council starts looking at the BAR, then all of a sudden we're now starting chasing things around town that's never even been looked at for 10 plus years?
Because we hired a code enforcer to do it.
We had a code enforcement prior, so.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this umbrella situation predates me. I would note, though, for example, I would think that an umbrella is something that could be found to be an other exterior alteration that a planning director could find to be minor in nature. And so a planning director, under the code the way it's written, one planning director could decide that that umbrella doesn't need to go to the Board of Architecture review.
So
And then later on, code enforcement comes and have a different opinion, and then now that person's getting fined for.
That would appear to be the potential impact of your code the way it's written.
Yeah, and in this case, the guy didn't even change the color of the umbrellas, and yet he still was penalized and fined. It made no sense. Is there any standardization in the application of I suppose the code as it's been described here? Is there any reason why we have to have a BAR to do something, for example, with respect to paint schemes?
Well, yeah, but the part of the reason why we've been pushing even with the prior council on updated design elements and sign ordinance is because of the lack of clarification in those items, as well as things change over time and you need to update your code, and you have businesses that are concerned about cost. Well, cost isn't just the fee that you pay to get your sign approved at the city. Cost is, probably on the business end of things, is really the cost in how long does it take for redos and a design consultant and whatever to run through the processes here at the city. Every time, these are high-paid consultants, and every time you go through that process, that person has to repay all those consultants and fees to go back to finally get a sign that can be approved through the BAR. And please, I'm speaking.
Really, I mean, if you're going to be
so,
rude,
hey, I am speaking. So,
right.
I'm just saying this is a concern. These are costs, especially when you start going through that circular process. This is why we're pushing so hard, even with the prior council, to update the design elements and the sign ordinance. These things have to get updated.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I've seen so many abuses of the system. For example, businesses that came in that spent 9 months or more trying to open up a business because our BAR and Planning Commission was like I don't want to use I have a different term for it, but it should never take a business 9 months to go through this process. In other words, they have to make the modifications, but they also have to carry the cost of the rent, and still they have no revenue. And I can point to a handful of companies like that. Secondly, unfortunately, the previous planning director did weaponize this, and I have proof of that.
I'm not I don't want to hear any more about the Planning Commission. This
No,
is
I'm
about the
talking
bar.
about the
This is about the
planning
BAR.
commission.
You just
This
said
is
planning-
entirely
you just
about
said
the
you're saying
BAR.
planning commission.
This is
I'm
over
talking about the bar
paint.
right now.
He's talking about the
Simply
planning director,
Said
not the planning
planning
commission.
director.
Planning director.
Not the
The
planning
planning
commission.
director had too much discretionary authority and simply abused it and threatened people. If you don't do things my way, or if you don't support me, I'll make it difficult for you to get your permits. And that was atrocious. That's one of the reasons why I ran.
Okay, well, Chip, I'm just overjoyed that we have hired you as our attorney and that you've managed to find stuff like this so you can fix this. And you can now make the Board of Architectural Review a legitimate organization and committee and board for the city of Solvang, because they're extremely important. It would be like taking a English lit professor and all of a sudden having them teach physics. It's night and day. One has to do with the aesthetics of the Solvang, the branding of Solvang. The other has to do with building, construction, zoning, permitting, and they can complement each other, but they're completely different organizations, two different mindsets. I mean, I have been on the bar, and I listen to my co-workers on the Board of Architectural Review. They really sit and think about, what should this look like? How is this best going to represent Solvang? And yes, down to the paint. Absolutely down to the paint, to the colors, to the roofing, to everything, to the signage. We streamlined the signage. We did streamline the signage. We did give a lot of discretion to the administration, where we thought, okay, well, we don't really have to sit and waste people's time on this. If it's within certain guidelines, go ahead. I'm not aware of any situation where the bar actually held up permits for 9 months, but maybe you are. I'm not. I'm just saying that the bar is an absolutely necessary organization for this city, just because of our unique dynamics and our identity. Now, and I loved how Nancy Emerson got up and spoke and gave a list of cities that do not have a Board of Architectural Review. There's no central design. There's no theme. We are a theme. We're a Danish theme. It's necessary. We need it.
How many projects do we have going on in the city right now that would require the BAR approval, or participation, or advice?
I believe, yes, 2 was the right number. That's
So we
all
have
I
a
could
whole
think
2. And I guess another question, a follow-up question would be, is there a way for our planning department to simply provide that service without having to delay a project for 2 projects? Especially if this was standardized in some form, so that these things could be done quickly over the counter, as opposed to having to wait a month, maybe ping-pong back and forth?
I'm sorry, I'm going to try to rephrase your question to see if I'm better understanding you. Hopefully this helps staff answer it. But I think there's 2 things that Chris just brought up. One was, is there, if the BAR were dissolved and you were to somehow accommodate the same service, however that's determined, through the Planning Commission, what would that look like? And then I think
Actually, that was just through the planning department itself. If we have so few projects going on, why can't these things be handled in-house through the planning department itself, over the counter?
So again, to get to the second part, what I was saying was, the real issue is relational policies versus, consistent and fair policies that any business coming to the city of Solvang, wanting to put a sign up, can actually review design guidelines and that are consistent, well maintained. I mean, our current design guidelines, it literally is a joke. I think it's like 5 pages, and it looks like it was coming from the 80s or something like that, and I'm pretty sure that's the date on the document. I think things have changed in Solvang. Things will change, and with that, we do have an RFP out there, and I'm gonna rehound on this because it feels like any time it's been asked for in the past, even with the prior council, somehow, and I have literally heard things like, oh, well, we don't think that's important, so we're not doing it. Well, it creates a lot of, heat in the political arena, because we've been asking for, it's now 3 years, and we still don't have a professional that is, workshopping this with the business community, with the resident, whoever it takes to create that consistent brand for Solvang, to create that easy to read design elements, to create that easy to read sign ordinance. And I think that is so important because BAR or not, staff needs something that they can stand behind and say, this is what it is. Businesses need something that they can hold to and show to the person, I'm sorry, I forgot your Lorraine, the business that makes signs. It's really hard for her to help her customers when, I'm sorry, if you read through that sign ordinance, you could probably try to make anything work, and that's as relational as we can get. You look at those design guidelines, 5 pages of, I know, and here's a picture of this, and, okay, great, make a decision. How can staff stand behind that? How can the council stand behind it? How can the BAR stand behind it? And now we're in the situation today where the perception is that sometimes a decision about a business putting up a display or putting up a sign or is now this relational policy type item. And it's relational type policies that I want to stop around here because it really creates a bad rap. It doesn't work for everyone. We need consistent and fair policies that are well developed. We need to get a consultant in here. We need to workshop it. We need to come up with a concrete, well-written design guidelines and sign ordinance. It's the only way we're going to solve some of these things. BAR or not.
Well, I agree, but I'd still like an answer to my question.
That is something that will reduce cost for staff time, will reduce time for the BAR, will reduce headaches for everyone, including down to the person that is creating the sign and the confused customer that just wants to simply open a business in Solvang and says, hey, I gotta get a sign that meets with this, and here's my brand. Hey, how do you make my brand work with Solvang's brand and their sign ordinance and everything? And then you get them sitting over there looking, well, gee, I don't know. I'm looking at these 5 pages here. I could come up with almost anything. I would encourage you to look at our design elements.
Well, I would encourage you to attend a bar meeting where people have come in front of
I'm
them
not,
with
this is
signs
not,
and
I am,
review
and
it,
don't get me
it's-
wrong, Karen,
it's
I'm speaking
approved.
right now. Don't get me wrong. I am not making a dig against the BAR and what I'm talking about. What I'm trying to just do is get the right people in here so that we can work through that process and come up with, better documents that are updated. That is a benefit to everyone involved.
Can I get an answer to my question, please?
Can
How
city
much
staff
city staff?
evaluate it? I do think that there's definitely a benefit to creating more clear policies that are easily interpreted.
Standardized
and
policies.
standardized, which then could streamline much of the processes which could be done by the city staff. And then maybe there is a function that is either a BAR, which apparently now does not legally exist, or the Planning Commission, or otherwise that maybe reviews less of the items that come to them, because most of it is clearly defined by the design guidelines and sign guidelines that can be easily interpreted. I do think that there is a benefit in that, and council could definitely direct staff to proceed with that process. And if you have any specific feedback on that now, or we need to come back and workshop,
Right.
that would be helpful as well.
Well, again, so I think what I'm hearing is that the answer is a great deal could be done in-house. There may be some things that maybe a BAR could fulfill, but we don't know yet because nobody's really taken the time to look into this.
Right.
And we only have 2 projects going on, so there's a huge demand for the BAR, right? Right. And I'll make another point, which is there was a particular business who painted his building the same exact color as it was before, and the BAR came and tried to penalize him because he didn't
And
get
Chris, just to clear, that's not the BAR that did that. That is code enforcement. It's
Yeah,
one of
and they
those-
used the BAR as a justification, and there was no code
And
justifying
code
that.
enforcement could definitely use much more clear guidelines.
That
in
was the
terms of
problem.
what
They were,
need to
and
be
I'm
enforced.
glad that we did change and correct that problem.
I wanna
And
make
the other
some
thing,
comments, too.
well, I will let you go, but I'm saying we definitely have problems trying to find good qualified people to sit on our boards. And I'd like if we do go forward with this idea
I just
that,
don't agree with that at
that
all.
we go, well, thank you for interrupting. So what I'm suggesting is that I would, if we're going to consider a BA or a planning commission update in the code, that we do consider expanding this to beyond the city limits, I don't know what the jurisdiction would be, but certainly there are a lot of talented people, for example, who live in Janet Acres and Ballard and that kind of thing, that would love to sit on our boards, but they can't because of an arbitrary thing. And they're just as much of this community as anyone else. They send their kids to our schools and that kind of thing.
Robert?
Just observations. I support having a BAR, and I just wish that we didn't need it because the guidelines were so easy for a business to come into town and look at a book and say, I've got this to pick from, this to pick from, this to pick from, et cetera. That's my point on that. I love Aaron's comments. I love Aaron's passion. And you made a really good point because there is an election in November. And the most lecturing this council gets, the most vitriol against this council, the most catcalls, the most nasty names against this council come from previous council members and board members. It was a husband and wife team when I was on the planning commission. And it just makes me angry that if we're trying to make something better, it makes us bad or me bad. We're trying to make it easier here, and there's so much animosity, it seems, toward trying to streamline a process. I just don't understand it. We get the little cat calls while we're trying to discuss this from the audience. It's just really frustrating. I want to have good architectural guidelines. I want to have a BAR, but I want to make it so easy that we wouldn't really need a BAR.
Well, that's the other thing. How many times does the Planning Commission actually meet during the year? For the last 4 years, the average has been...
Planning or BAR?
Planning Commission. The average has been 6 times per year for the last 4 years. And they're right on track for the same thing this year. I don't think they're terribly busy, or they're too busy to be able to pick up some of the work if and when there was an actual a need for a BAR advice. So in the short run, I think while we're trying to update the code, and I think that certainly should be done or looked at in terms of alternatives, if we're going to have a BAR, this is what it should look like. Right? If we're not going to have a BAR, this is what it should look like, and this is where the planning department can pick up some of this work and standardize it. But, and again, this is a point that somebody made earlier. The cost to the city of the BAR is about $18,000 a year. And at this point, I don't see why we have them if there are only 2 projects in the town, especially if some of this stuff can be done in-house for the time being. If and when we have more projects, and hopefully these will intersect, where the code has been updated and now we can have and we're actually moving forward with multiple projects, then the BR might become relevant again.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, again, I just need direction which way to go. I can tell you that adding a BAR in section 2 of your municipal code where it ought to be is absolutely not going to be legal rocket science. I can do that if that's what you direct. I can bring back alternatives, for example, on whether you require the members to be in the city or not in the city. It would be nice to have some of that guidance if you do want me to go back and write that section. The other thing that I would say, you all, one of the first meetings I attended, you all had directed staff to make changes in the sign ordinance. The staff made those changes to the sign ordinance, which largely moved decision-making on sign issues to staff rather than at the Board of Architectural Review. That was, I think...
With the option for appeal.
Yeah, I think that was back in June. Here we are in December. That's gone to the Planning Commission and hasn't come back to you. So it might be helpful for you to receive at least an opportunity to review what staff had recommended and then what the Planning Commission is recommending. And then we can bring to you those sections where BAR jurisdiction does lie right now, and we could walk through with you in a more detailed meeting, a discussion which things would you like BAR to do if you're going to have one, and which things are you comfortable having staff with an appeals process be able to approve, and which things, for example, you might find that there are things that you would like to have go to the Planning Commission. I think the last time you had such a review was looking at the dates of the ordinances in here was in 1990. That's 29 years ago, so that might be a worthwhile thing to go through. But
So
again,
kind of like start from scratch?
well, it's not necessarily start entirely from scratch. Again, before I go write an ordinance to put the BAR in your municipal code, though, you all have had at least a couple of meetings I've attended where there's been discussion about not having a BAR. That would seem to be the very, very first simple direction to us. Do you want us to provide you with a draft ordinance where you can decide whether you're going to, in fact, put that in your code? If you don't want us working on that, just give us that direction as well. I would think the next step would be, though, if you're not going to codify your BAR and make clear that it does in fact exist, then you may want us to go through the ordinance and find those places where there is reference to the BAR being the decision maker in things. So again, or just direct us that continuing the way things have been, where it is, it just happens by happenstance, is okay. But I think those are the three things that I can see as policy direction we need from amongst those three opportunities.
Is there a way to flush each one of those out so that we can then more easily and clearly understand the ramifications of each one? Because all three of them deserve more discussion. I would love to have Daniel in on this discussion as well. I think it's only fair to bring him in for
I think this is a very important step in your city's process, and it would certainly be helpful to have a complete council. You could table this item, and we can come back with a more fleshed out set of recommendations, including again a more fleshed out listing of what the BAR does right now under your code, and also talk to the planning staff about not just what is referenced in the code, but also by practice, what things do or don't go to the BAR.
Can you also do some kind of a comparison with one or more cities? For example, is it Leavenworth? Is that name?
Leavenworth, Washington.
So Leavenworth is a community very similar to Solvang, and it'd be interesting to see how they manage to maintain their identity in terms of the architecture. Maybe they have a BAR. If they do, what does the BAR do?
We can certainly look at that example again. I'm quite familiar with a number of jurisdictions who have updated their codes more recently than 28 years ago, so we could provide you with some examples.
So remind me again what the old city manager was doing for the last 10 years?
So let's
stop.
Just keep to getting this done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm totally fine with tabling this and letting staff receive and file some of the feedback. I do think it's unfortunate that Daniel had other obligations and couldn't be here tonight. But again, what I'm really going to stress is what I was saying earlier, and kind of converting away from more relational policies to consistent type
Black and white.
Right.
Black and white things. It's something that even
More
the BAR can, more transactional, however you want to call it, something the BAR can, really stand behind, something staff can really stand behind, something the Planning Commission and the Council can really stand behind. And again, design elements and sign ordinance, it just, we got to do it. The RFP has got to go out. I'd love to see it workshopped. I'd love to see, these things, really get updated and to have that community involvement and really get people involved. Do I really want to do it as a council? No, I don't want to do design elements and sign ordinance. Would I love for the BAR to do that and to take on those workshops and, get all that done properly? Yes, I would actually really love for that to happen. So I think that there's some things to consider here. But again, I'm really, really, really going to emphasize, again, I'm kind of tired of sounding like a broken wheel about this. But again, 3 years, design elements and sign ordinance have been asked for from this council. We have a great new administration here. I want to see it happen.
I think they're looking for direction. I'd like to go ahead and move.
I think at this time what I would like to do is table the item and really emphasize the feedback that you've heard tonight. And then I want to get a more comprehensive staff report on options for how we can make this better for everyone.
I think we have to direct them to do something.
Yeah, and if you can just clarify whether there is general consensus to just proceed with the RFP for design guidelines update now.
Yes, that's for sure. I say yes to that too.
And that's in the budget, and we can go ahead and do that.
So then codifying and solidifying the actual BAR will be tabled.
That would be
We'll
tabled.
just leave them with their feedback, let them run with it, and let's get the priority
You're
behind me.
tabling that because we don't have a quorum or because you choose to wait for Daniel?
No,
No.
because I think we need more information from staff.
I think
on
there's
the
a lot of great
different
things brought
options.
up here tonight. But again, what I'm really saying is, no matter what you do, get rid of the BAR, keep the BAR. You're not fixing anything unless we're updating those design guidelines and sign ordinance. We have to make this fair. We have to make this better for everyone. We have to make this business friendly. We have to make this easy for anyone to come in here, transparently go to our website, pull up the sign ordinance, pull up design, guidelines, and be able to clearly see what the expectations are around here. Anything less than that is wasting everyone's time. Quite frankly, it's wasting the BAR's time to go to the BR and have to be explained why you can't, put a big fancy neon sign across, Highway 246, because that wasn't really, I'm being dramatic to get my point across, but I'm just saying we should have very clear, expectations of what is in there.
And that's not controversial.
No.
Well, it
So
shouldn't be.
but again,
So can you come up with some frameworks through
I
which
haven't
these
had the
systems can be
consultant
put in
hired that is
place?
getting this done for us, so I'm gonna really, I think that's where the burner needs to be.
Yes, I understand the general direction, and I think, we brought this item because it was on the advanced calendar. We knew that we needed to just get the process going. Appreciate all the feedback, and we'll come back with further recommendations.
And look, I can't say enough about what a wonderful job you three have done in bringing this to light and helping us to work through a very sticky and controversial and contentious issue, apparently, to some members in the community. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be, because what we're trying to do is make the citizens, the businesses, and the visitors better off through, I guess, a more comprehensive review of the BAR process. Architectural review. I'm not denying that the architectural review process is invaluable in terms of maintaining our identity. I just think there's got to be a smarter, better way to do this. So I'm looking forward to your answers.
Okay. On to item number 8.
So may I actually suggest that since this was a lengthy discussion on the BAR, it would be perfectly appropriate for the council to once again bump this item to the January 13th agenda. We can still come back with any feedback at the end of January and be on
For
track
item number 8.
for
Yeah, I
item
brought that
number
up
8.
actually because
Yeah.
this is really.
I was
near and
actually
dear
gonna
to
say the
Daniel's
same
heart.
thing. Yeah.
So Daniel needs to be involved in every discussion.
So
here.
motion to table item number 8 to the January 13th meeting.
Councilmember Wade,
Do we have a second?
I second.
thank you. Was that a yes?
To wait for.
Table item number 8 to the next meeting, to regular meeting, January 13th.
The
So
grant
that-
funding.
so-
Thank you.
Yes.
And I think that either way you want to do it on item number 7, I didn't hear objection to the direction to table. It would be good to make sure that the minutes, that either you have a motion to do that or that the minutes are clear that that was without objection.
To wait to table 7.
7,
Yeah. Okay. So motion. Do you want a motion to table 7?
it would be better.
Let's do 7, if I may, Mayor.
I'll make the motion to table 7 and for staff to come back with the items prioritized during the
I'll second
discussion. It's been seconded.
Councilmember Wade,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Diarnes,
Yes.
Mayor Tucson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Now 8.
I believe that you had a motion also on 8.
Right.
And it was seconded.
And it was seconded.
Councilmember Wade on number 8.
Yes.
Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Diarnes,
Yes.
Mayor Tucson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
On to item number 9. Now, are we past our, was it 9:30?
You're past your 9:30, but you're
Okay.
also on your last agenda item.
So we actually do need a motion.
Actually do this one.
We need a motion to continue. I'll make the motion to continue.
I second that.
It's been seconded.
Councilmember Wade, the motion to continue beyond 9:30. Mayor Pro Tem Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Diarnes,
Yes.
Mayor Tucson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Okay. Item number 9, AB 1234, report out, council comments, and request. Who would like to start?
I got nothing.
Got a couple of things.
Okay, Karen?
First one was, we had an issue regarding the the legalities of posting our agenda without the packet. And so I kind of did go over that with the attorney, and he assured us and me that you may post the agenda in the appropriate time frame. You're not required to post the packet with it. So there seems to be confusion in the public regarding that. So I don't know how to clarify that to the public.
Mr. Mayor, if I may clarify, you have an obligation, there is a requirement under the Brown Act that for regular meetings, you post an agenda which has a description of the items that are going to be heard at the meeting, and that happen 72 hours in advance at least of the meeting. You had a speaker earlier who read the affidavit of posting, which is in fact accurate and correct. The affidavit of posting notes that the agenda was posted 72 hours in advance of the meeting. You don't actually have to have a packet at all, but to the extent that you do have a packet, to the extent that you have information about agenda items that are going to be considered at the meeting, all the Brown Act requires is that at the same time as that material is provided to the council, then that information also needs to be made available to the public. And so in this instance, the agenda packet was provided to the council on Sunday, and it was also posted to your website on Sunday. There was
a transparent way.
Yeah. There was a copy available to the public here.
At the same
as soon as, yeah, at the same time. And there's also a requirement that if people make a written request, then you need to mail it to anybody making a written request to actually have old style mail sent to them. I'm not aware that we have anybody who's made a written request to have old style stuff mailed to them. My read of the Brown Act requirement is that now that we actually have email, having it made available electronically would meet the requirement for mailing. And I'm going to look to Darren, Daryl, not right now, but before your next council meeting to just check and see in any of our old filings, do we have anybody who has made a written request to have the packet sent to them? And again, that's the only requirement. When it goes to you, it also is available to the public. If it had gone to you
on Thursday,
on Thursday, that's when it would be available. If it went to you this afternoon, that's when it would need to be available.
Okay.
Can I interject for a minute?
Sure.
Also, to be mindful, Mayor and Council, is that we recently adopted the council protocols, and within that, we shortened and we took away certain provisions that were outdated. So Mr. Wilbrang is correct in saying that as long as we post the agenda, the template, if you will, within 72 hours, giving notice of the items that are going to be heard, that will meet that requirement. And I think, if you go back and read the council protocols, that's really well articulated there, because we cleaned that up to make it, I guess, somewhat shorter for people to kind of read. Another point that I'd like to make, if I may, there's no such a list of subscribers in terms of actually mailing papers out. We don't do that anymore. That's antiquated, that's old-fashioned, we don't do that anymore. For expediency purposes, what we do now is we have a list of 30 subscribers that have requested electronic receiving the agenda packet electronically, both the agenda template itself and the agenda packet when it's ready. We have done that. The other agenda list that we have online is through our Civic Plus system, which is where we post the agenda. Once the agenda is generated, it goes to people's mobile devices, to all these electronic devices that people have requested to be noticed on, and that's an automatic sort of notification that I send out once the agenda packet is fully posted. So that goes out, and people would get the alerts on their cell phones and other gadgets, if you will.
My only comments is yes, legal, best practice, no, but we're working to improve all that. We also, just so that the council's aware, have, pretty substantial breakdowns in terms of our communication software and technology. So there's, again, all that is the processes that we've already begun to fix. Obviously, you're aware of the past few meetings. We've had trouble even getting recordings of the video. So we have a consultant coming in to give options to replace that. Again, a lot of it's just older meshed together technology that we're dealing with, and it causes a lot of staff delays. But I, again, want to thank all of you for your hard work. Clearly, when you're putting together your staff reports, you're also searching through lots of inconsistent code and really trying to come up with, what needs to happen. And it's very hard when that's not concrete and transparent and clear. So that cleanup process will continue on for a little while, and then I hope that we'll get on a better schedule. And the council would actually love to have the agenda packets on Wednesday, so we can start reviewing, because it puts a little extra stress on this too, to be able to get the packet and have to come up to speed on that. So
I prefer to wait till 4 o'clock the day of the meeting.
Okay.
Staff would actually love to distribute the staff reports on Wednesday as well and take the weekend
I
off.
always
but
get mine on the way into the meeting.
And then finally, I
Wait.
would just like to.
Could you please speak into the microphone? But
finally-
anyway, I just wanted to say we addressed, but that's the reason why there's some of these delays, and we're working to get all these things addressed. But until we have, we even learned last week after Lansby made an assessment that we've got some cabling problems connecting the planning department to the to City Hall, and that we might lose the planning department.
And just to notice to the public, when we distribute the agendas, we really encourage in going through one process. So we're really looking at, we'll add anybody's email that wants to have it emailed to the website, so that when we post, everybody's automatically noticed.
And that was another issue. We had like one email list that the prior city clerk was emailing separate than the actual Civic Plus
secret list?
Not a secret list, but just separate than the actual Civic Plus subscription list. And so one of the things that was done, I believe this has been accomplished now, is that those lists have now been merged, so it's a consistent process for notifications.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for bringing that up. It's important because it's very timely. I have sent a notification when I send out the agenda packet that effective January 13th, those two lists will be merged into one. So to make it easier for the public to get the agenda packet, they will be receiving the link, which directly goes to the agenda itself, and it has the bookmarks, as you have noted. So as opposed to navigating through the website, they can just open it up and double click, and it will open up the file, and it's very simple. But
Great.
we make an effort to always do better.
Awesome. Love it.
Okay, since
I had two comments.
Yeah, Karen, I'll finish with your...
Thank you. I'm not faulting you. My second comment was, I just wanted to apologize to Chris for interrupting him. But I just want to say, sometimes you frustrate me so much, and it's very difficult for me to keep my mouth shut. No.
I'm shocked.
So am I.
First of all, I want to say thank you to Karen for being so passionate about her position. I'm not arguing against your position. I think I encourage everybody to put out their best argument, and whichever one is chosen. Right, whatever's chosen is chosen. Now, having said that, I just want to, on a positive note, say thank you to the Egan brothers, who came through in a very difficult moment. We're learning a lot about this stuff now. So, and again, a shout out to Aaron Peterson and the crew over there. From start to finish, they went after it and they got it done. And that's the can-do spirit that makes a city. In other words, it's the civic groups that come together that make the city work, and I really appreciate what they did. I also want to say thank you to ESCO, because not only did he contribute $3,000 to the Christmas tree itself in the city's Solvang Park, but he also added, I guess, up to $1,000 of retail value of ornaments to that really big tree. And then, of course, he dresses up. He does so much for the city, and I want to say thank you to him. He doesn't ask for anything in return. When we needed, Santa hats for the parade, he donated them. He donates a lot of stuff that we managed to benefit from. We should at some point.
Well, he was mentioned in the proclamation for the tree lighting. Yeah.
So in that respect, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has contributed mightily to the success of Yule Fest, to the success of the city, who have served on the boards and the councils, and I appreciate their animated arguments, such as Aaron Peterson, and I respect that. There's no problem with that, but I think they don't understand that we're up here trying to do the best we can in correcting some of these problems and issues that have unfortunately been allowed to accumulate over 30 years? Is that right?
1993.
Yeah, I mean...
There's a small group in every town that will attack everything the council does, and we have that
Yeah,
small group.
and I get that. So all I'm saying is it's time to fix a lot of these issues, and that's what this council is doing. So kudos. That used to do hits and misses on the Wall Street Journal report. A hit to the council for taking up the mantle and doing the hard stuff and taking the hits from the community along the way. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Wait, and one more thing. Thank you to Robert Cray, tremendous musician. Highly recommend that you guys go see him every chance you get. And for him to come in and speak to us, that was really, that was fantastic. And his son is just as talented, and I look forward to seeing him play in the park.
I wasn't aware of what Kay's issue was, and I feel bad for her.
I didn't know either. I didn't know that was.
So microphones. I'm sorry.
But we were going to
hold
look
on,
into that.
I haven't made any comment. And the title starts with AB 1234 to make sure that we stay in compliance and report out on any activities we went to that were funded by the city. So we have to make sure that's always taken care of right away. So with that, I believe everyone's probably been around for some Yule Fest activities.
Yes.
Are there any comments on the Yule Fest
I guess
activities? Any experiences? Is there
We paid for our own candy.
any life on this council at this point, or have we gotten too late?
I paid for decorations
Yeah.
for the Mokies.
Ryan and I paid for the candy.
All right, so we're in the parade. We were in the Mokes. I believe we had all council members except for Daniel Johnson, who's out at a business conference, and the tree lighting was absolutely beautiful. It was a great. I don't think I've ever seen that park that full of people. I don't know if there's any more that we could have fit in there.
I think there was more than 300 people there.
I think there was more than 300. Yeah.
More than 300 people there.
It was completely full.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. So, again, kudos to the event coordinator for putting on such a wonderful event.
I've been to several light shows on Copenhagen. Definitely way more people than I've ever seen out there before that late. So I think that's great. And I still see that they're fine-tuning little problems we run into and stuff like that, which, is going to happen with anything that's new. And, want to still encourage any member of the public or anyone to send in feedback regarding these items about how we can best tailor them for the future. But I think working on the tight timeline that we have and everything, I think it's an awesome
I think so
awesome job.
far so good.
Yeah.
I think it's really been a neat Yule Fest so far, and we're only 1 week into December, a little more than a week.
The only thing I would add to this, I want to encourage more businesses to stay open past 5 p.m. The Christmas market idea was designed around them, to bring people to Copenhagen and to the community so that they would have something to do and shop. Unfortunately, it seems like the business community isn't complying.
I have been noticing more. I think the nights that have been out on Copenhagen, it just seemed to me that from the prior week to this week, I noticed more businesses, trying staying open late. So I think that part of it is just, they don't really know what's coming or how to prepare for it. And then you start to see it and you start to see, okay, can I take advantage of that? And I think that that's great.
Well, I want to encourage them to do that because, for example, Sam over at Cafe Dolce took the initiative to bring hot chocolate to the event. I think he just
and I walked by his place late on Saturday night.
Donuts for $3.
It was still packed,
See,
but
he
they were pretty donuts.
They were big and pretty.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's simple things like that. The business community needs to step up the people aren't going to necessarily come and find them. They need to get out there and be seen.
And I love some of the activities I'm seeing in the park. The petting zoo, and I think that's really important. It's a very family friendly type item, and I always encourage interactions with kids at a young age with animals and stuff, because I think it's really important to have a respect for life and how to treat your animals as you grow up and stuff like that. And I love the shed in the park. It's makes the gazebo look even more tired, but I know it's on the list to do something there. But I was thinking, maybe we should think about ways to utilize that shed more. It's already there.
Santa shed?
The Santa shed. I kind of imagine a little window on the side, and it can be used during music in the park to serve fillet of fishes, and no, hot chocolate, coffee, whatever. I don't know. Maybe there's something there. It could be dressed up for Easter. It could be dressed up for.
Staff would love to leave it right where it is year round.
So maybe there's something to think about with how we can dress it up and make something like that work. That might be something
part
for
of
the
the
council
Solvang RFP.
to consider after your fest is
RFP.
over. And let's see what else. Hey, it was great to see Wildan here tonight. Last year, I was told it was impossible and could never be done to get rid of California code check.
That's so true.
It's gone.
I appreciate the challenge that the previous city manager and
Okay, Chris, let's just
lawyer
move on
had
with the
at fulfilling
Okay,
or
we're done.
complying
We're
with the
done.
council's request. How easy was this?
All right.
Kudos to you guys for making that happen in a matter of weeks.
I have to say, I like working with you guys very, very much.
Yeah, you're doing a great job. And then we had, let's see. Oh, we had a film crew, and I don't know, Katie, you're still here. Can you just explain that to the council so I don't misspeak for,
Sure. So Hallmark was here. I don't know the exact number of days, but they put out a casting call, and I think that alone was good PR for Solvang, because people hear Hallmark, and I may be a fan of Hallmark movies, but they're great this time of year, and the exposure is huge, especially for women.
And then wasn't there another film thing? What was it that I did?
And then the plates. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact name. Plates. Anna Ferguson Sparks was here. It was a dining show where they went around Solvang and went to a lot of different establishments, thanks to Stiletto Marketing. And Mayor Toussaint was there, and you went to First and Oak and Lansby, is that correct?
First and Oak and the Lansby, and they also went to the Solvang restaurant before that, and one other restaurant, I forget, but those were the two that I hosted for them. So
we'll start to keep you up to date once those go.
And I was doing an
air.
episode on food and the history of food in Solvang or something like that, I think. So
Really?
yeah. And then let's see, what was the last thing? Oh, another item would be, and maybe some of this is already.
I definitely want to bring out since you brought her up. There was a Netflix film being developed around something, right? There's another Netflix movie coming out, or film crew coming out.
I'm not familiar with Netflix, but I did forget to mention the Hallmark movies called Christmas in Solvang. Can't beat that.
There we go.
Well, I guess it was Scott Schumacher that had suggested there's another Netflix crew coming out. And then, of course, I want to reiterate the fact that Fox Business News is coming out to interview you.
I want to be in that interview.
Well, so do I. Okay. I guess I'm not pretty enough. So the point I'm trying to make is that this council, this crew has done more to improve the image and the awareness of Solvang than I'm, at least going back decades. We've done all of this in a matter of, 2 months? So we must be doing something right. But wait a minute.
Our 1-year anniversary.
I know the SCBB is doing a great job.
Okay, all right, that's enough.
And the chamber?
Okay,
No?
so my last thing was to touch on earlier, we had some ordinance updates, and I'm just wondering, just want to reemphasize, consider some kind of light ordinance or something to get some of the lights on these buildings fixed up, no more empty sockets and burnout bulbs and things that, we talk about branding, we talk about the value of the BAR and how that makes the village look great, but, you have to maintain it, and we have a maintenance problem. So
So why can't we
Is
have-
that something within that review that you could, okay.
Why can't we come up with some kind of a program to incentivize people to do that? Essentially, like, give them a break on the last month, like December sales tax. If they're going to spend the money improving their building through lights and trees and things like this, and they can show that these are my receipts for that expense, they can come back into the city and say,
Oh,
well,
that's a
fine.
lot of paperwork.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I think there's more,
I like the
more,
idea.
more merit around chasing after special bulbs that are with the cover
right.
tops or something and buying them in bulk, and then the businesses can, reimburse or something that way. I don't know. I'll let you guys look into some of that stuff.
I've got 13 in my house.
Yeah, but the problem is some of those lights that they're using on the oldest part of town are terrible. So replacing the
but that's
old crap
the
with
thing
more
is that
old
you
crap
can
doesn't make sense.
You can look into those kinds of bulbs with the right temperature, the right this, all these kinds of things to be considered. Because when you walk around the town at night, I mean, I've seen the ones that are like almost like bright white neon kind of look, and then you have the classier warm light kind of look, and
Lansby and Rasmussen's have a lot of missing bulbs.
yeah. So that should be something that's and what temperature
look at the
what
lights on
temperature is
Alisal
that to
in
create
general. It's they're
that
not
kind of
there.
classy feel and stuff like that. I think those are things that should be considered, especially if we're going to emphasize on branding and refining ourselves. I think that's something we definitely need to come up with. It can't be just anyone going out and buying
I
a
think
certain
the
bulb with any
BAR
color temperature.
That's one area where the BAR could make a difference.
Yeah.
In terms of if
All right.
we're going to go in that direction with lighting.
Last one. Zena, I think you finally got a little bit of time off on Saturday, and it was your anniversary. So I just wanted to wish say happy anniversary and thank you for even working on the weekend to get.
On Yule Fest, right?
Whereas Saturday.
You're not on the mic. You're on the microphone, please. Okay. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you for your hard work and for even working on your anniversary weekend. So that was great.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we're adjourned.
Okay, you guys. Wait. Okay, Ryan, pick one name out of here. Pick one.
Can I give you this back?
I got two.
You got three.
Three.
Okay, you're buying that person a $10 gift for Christmas.
Oh, okay. Oh, we're doing a white elephant?
Everybody here is involved, so don't leave.